6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of March. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Nana Akweer. Right, let's talk about it. Deporting foreign criminals, the Conservatives' push for all offenders from overseas to be removed from Britain. And as it's revealed, a quarter of people convicted of sex crimes are foreign.
And more on that North Sea inferno. Foul play has not been ruled out after an oil tanker and a container ship collided yesterday 10 miles off Grimsby.
Triple murder.
It's now more than 24 hours on since that collision between the 2 ships in the North Sea. 1 crew member still remains unaccounted for, and questions are now being asked as to how and why the collision happened.
Triple murder sentencing. Kyle Clifford has refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner and her sister with a crossbow and their mother with a 10-inch butchering knife. Will be live at Cranebridge Crown Court.
And Paris migrant mayhem. 450 migrant squatters took over a theatre in France with neighbours facing financial ruin.
Fashion Week in Paris, but no shows in this theatre area because the protests over immigration and housing continue.
What a load of rubbish. Kicking up a stink as Birmingham bin workers begin walkouts over pay. I do find it quite funny, though, this migrants welcome, refugees welcome, and then they all came and they did, and then they haven't left. This is the thing with this sort of left-wing, wonderful generosity, which is nice, very nice, until it goes wrong.
And the numbers are just so high now that nobody, either in Britain or in France, really knows what to do. And, of course, we're going to be talking during the programme about the Conservatives' idea of sending home anybody who commits a crime immediately. But there are questions about how workable that is. So, it's not just us grappling with these things, though, is it? Doogie Beattie's going to be live in Paris, hopefully talking to some locals.
I say get us out of the ECHR or come up with something where we can circumnavigate it and get around it. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, Miriam, thank you and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 12. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Fires are still raging on off the coast of East Yorkshire today after a ship carrying toxic chemicals collided with a US military jet fuel tanker yesterday. The Coast Guard called off the search for a missing crew member last night, and so far investigators haven't ruled out foul play following those explosions yesterday morning. The crash took place on the North Sea off the coast of East Yorkshire, with emergency services rescuing 36 crew members. Local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, is set to meet with maritime authorities shortly. As you've been hearing, triple killer Kyle Clifford has refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner and her sister with a crossbow and their mother with a 10-inch butchering knife. 26-year-old Clifford previously admitted the murders of Louise, Hannah and Carol Hunt. He was found guilty of the rape of Louise Hunt last week following a trial at Cambridge Crown Court. Judge Mr Justice Joel Benathan told the court a short time ago that the defendant was asked to attend the sentencing hearing in person or by video link, but refused. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Elsewhere, at least 3 people have been killed in the Moscow region after Ukraine reportedly launched its largest drone attack on Russia in 3 years, with the Kremlin accusing Ukraine of targeting apartment blocks. The attack, which was comprised of at least 91 drones, comes as peace talks between the US and Ukraine are underway in Saudi Arabia today. It also follows reports that President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, plans to travel to Russia and meet President Vladimir Putin this week. More breaking news today, and Manchester United have announced plans to build the biggest stadium in the country, worth £2 billion. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who co-owns the club, has said he wants to build, quote, the greatest stadium in the world. United have confirmed their intention to pursue a new stadium as, quote, the centrepiece of the regeneration of the Old Trafford area, supporting the government's growth agenda. According to reports, it would seat 100,000 football fans, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe has held a press conference today about those plans. The Conservatives have said they will push for Labour's Borders Bill to be changed to require all foreign nationals convicted of a crime to be deported. The party said they would table an amendment to the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, requiring any foreign national convicted of a crime to be removed from the country, including anyone charged with or convicted of an immigration offence. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
At a time when our jails are full, where the government's releasing hardened criminals from jail, why keep foreign offenders who should be the responsibility of the countries that they've come from? Why doesn't it happen? Well, very much of that is the interlocking between the human rights system, the legacy that we inherited from Tony Blair and previous governments, and the courts. This whole domain of endless appeals has expanded over time, and that's what Kemi and our Shadow Home Secretary have been talking about.
The government has promised to, quote, unleash seismic reforms to the planning system as it publishes major new legislation today. Labour hopes the legislation will help deliver on its promise to build 1.5 million homes and make decisions on 150 major infrastructure projects by the next election. Reports also suggest that councils will be given greater powers to acquire land through compulsory purchase orders, and to pay only its current value rather than what it could be worth if developed, as it is in the current system. Minister of State for Housing and Planning Matthew Pennycook spoke to GB News earlier.
Well, we are introducing a landmark planning and infrastructure bill into the House of Commons today. It will be transformative in terms of what it means for how we build things in this country. And the purpose of the bill is to speed up and streamline the delivery of new homes and infrastructure. And part of that is through compulsory purchase powers, unlocking land more effectively. It won't be for ministers to decide what land is unlocked. It will be for local authorities in any particular area to use these powers where they think it's appropriate. But we do want to make it easier for them to do so. We want to make the process more efficient. We want to reduce administration costs so that we can get greater use of these powers.
And finally, His Majesty the King has been trained and refreshed in first response care this morning at an event with the Royal College of Nursing. The King celebrated the 1000th King's Nursing Cadet at the Royal College. The scheme aims to help young people develop essential skills needed to start a career in nursing. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Nana and Miriam.
Welcome back. Now, is it time to get tougher on foreign criminals? Well, the Conservatives have announced that they will table an amendment to the government's immigration legislation that would require all foreign criminals to be removed from the country, including anyone charged with or convicted of an immigration offence.
Now, the party claims that the amendment would also get rid of the threshold of a 1-year prison sentence required for removal and end exceptions granted in accordance with the ECHR and modern slavery and asylum laws.
So, should the UK deport all foreign criminals? Well, to debate this, we're joined by senior researcher at the Prosperity Institute, Guy Dampier, and founder of the Sanctuary Foundation, Krish Kandaya. Thank you both for joining us. Guy, let's start with you. Now, I understand these amendments have been laid and they will work by withdrawing indefinite leave to remain from somebody if they are convicted of a criminal offence. Firstly, do you support this? And secondly, do you think it's workable?
I think there's no reason why somebody who has come to this country and committed a crime should have access to indefinite leave to remain. And I think it's an eminently workable thing to do. There are plenty of countries around the world that have harsh, effective measures to make sure that immigrants that come here are beneficial for the country as a whole. And obviously, committing criminal acts is not beneficial. So I think it is workable if they want to make it work.
Krish, surely you can't possibly support that we, we're going to keep our borders nice and open. Even if someone's committed a crime, then they don't immediately get deported if they are waiting to have an asylum claim heard or something like that. You can't support, surely, that we shouldn't be doing that?
I think this is an overreaction. We already have laws in place. If someone has a criminal conviction with a custodial sentence of over a year, then they can be and will be deported. That seems fair. That's a serious crime. But this legislation would say any crime for any foreign national. Well, what's wrong? My son is engaged to be married to a young woman from America. Let's say that they haven't got married yet. She hasn't got her citizenship in the United Kingdom. Then she commits a crime. She breaks the law by speeding. Maybe she drops a bit of litter. Surely, to be deported for this...
Criminal offences.
They are criminal offences.
No, they're not. They're civil offences. Those are civil offences. So the parking fines and things like that, they're civil offences. They're not criminal offences. We're talking about somebody who's committed a criminal offence.
Well, what about praying in your own home near an abortion clinic? Does that count as a criminal offence? You could be deported for that. Would that be an appropriate response? I think these are an overreaction. I think we're not making any distinction between legal migration, illegal migration, any foreign national from any country. These seems to be an overreaction to me.
Now, Guy, obviously we are considering, when we're talking about this, perhaps recently arrived illegal immigrants, but actually we've got to consider the fact that there will be people who have been in this country for a long time, have indefinite leave to remain, who are perhaps in very good jobs, productive to our economy. Were they to be convicted of a criminal offence, that would mean that they would, under this proposal by the Conservatives, be deported, possibly their families as well. Do you think that is a proportionate response?
I think the number of people who are in this country who've got indefinite leave to remain, who are in good paying jobs, who then commit a criminal act, is going to be unbelievably tiny. So I think it's a perfectly proportionate act when we do consider the scale of what we're dealing with. The Centre for Migration Control recently showed that in the last 3 years, there have been 104,000 convictions for foreign nationals, of which 38,000 were either violent or sexual or involved drugs. So we have a major problem and we need to tackle it. And very clearly, it's not being tackled at the moment. The courts are absolutely clogged up with this stuff and we're proving incapable of getting rid of them. So I think anything that encourages us to do that is a good thing.
Krish, I mean, look, we haven't even got room in our prisons for our homegrown criminals, let alone the foreign nationals who commit crime. So surely, again, another benefit of this would be the fact that we can just send them off to another country.
Look, I'm open for serious criminals to be deported. That seems entirely appropriate as someone is going through a system to see whether they're a valid citizen or not. This seems to be appropriate. But to make any crime and any foreign national, that feels like using a sledgehammer to crack open an egg. It's a blunt instrument.
But we haven't got the space in the prisons to house them. I mean, I'm not happy for my taxes paying for people who probably haven't contributed to this country. Some of them maybe not, but... That's what happens. You go to another country, you commit a crime, they'll chuck you out. Go to Dubai, try committing a crime there, they'll chuck you out straight away.
Well, I don't think there should be a two-tier system in our legal arrangements that if you're a foreign national, you're treated more harshly than a UK national. That doesn't seem fair.
Isn't that the point of citizenship, is that you have citizenship and you have preferential treatment in the country of your citizenship? That's how the nation-state works. And we have responsibility to sort out British criminals. They are our responsibility, whether we are punishing them, rehabilitating them.
Well, we didn't do that for Shamima Begum, did we? We decided she wasn't a citizen anymore because she committed a crime in another country.
But we are not actually talking about citizens. We are talking about people who have yet to gain citizenship and currently are either have or are trying to get indefinite leave to remain. So we're not actually talking about citizens. But Guy, my question about this is, in theory, it sounds like a sensible idea, but how workable is it? Because if the country of origin either doesn't have a functioning government or refuses to take back the criminals and isn't concerned about potential visa restrictions, the Conservative proposals, we're back to square one, especially if people have arrived on a boat, got rid of any identity documents, and it cannot be proven which country they've come from. So how could this actually work in practice, given current restrictions?
Well, I think it's important that you mentioned that one of the proposals is to do visa sanctions. So if you commit a crime and your country won't take you back, then we simply won't let that country get more visas. And most of the people that we've got coming here, especially those committing crimes, they do actually come from countries which do have borders, which may not be as functional as they might like to be, or might not be as rich as they might like to be, but actually they are there and they do work, and that's perfectly feasible. There will be a small handful of countries where it's more difficult to remove people like that, but I think in those circumstances there are alternative things that can be worked out, and we'll just have to take those options when we finally get to them.
We should have kept Rwanda, or another one is to do the Trump tactic, which is raise tariffs on those countries if we are currently trading with them and make it difficult for them to trade. But hey, you know, but Chris, overall, listening to this, you must be in favour of it.
No, I'm not in favour of it, and I'm not in favour of it for people who have moved here from America or from Europe, European nationals, for example, who aren't citizens but have indefinite leave to remain. But also this criminalises the very act of claiming asylum in the UK. I believe as a nation, a major economy in the world, we should be allowing people to claim asylum here. And you can't do that.
Sorry, I'm confused.
Because you can't claim asylum from outside of the United Kingdom.
Well, you
can only do that from Ukraine and Afghanistan. The only way to claim asylum is come to the UK and make an asylum claim.
This is about
so it becomes
and by doing that, you've come illegally and therefore committed a crime. But Guy, I suppose that the counter to that would be that, of course, Britain wants to and should take some asylum seekers from some places in the world and offer sanctuary to people who are fleeing. But it can't be the case that Britain can be responsible for all people in the world who would want to claim asylum. So how do we get past this problem of wanting safe and legal routes for those that we want to accept, but also making sure that there are sensible sanctions and deterrents for those who would come illegally?
Well, I think actually Chris mentioned it there. There are actually routes for people to come. Now, we've created bespoke routes for Hong Kongers, for people from Ukraine, for people from Syria, for people from Afghanistan. That's already a lot of routes and a lot of people. And there's also the UN Refugee Agency. So they do actually vet and then bring people from UN refugee camps around the world. So there are ways into the country legally. But the current system that we have is a free-for-all in which we're having hundreds of thousands of people illegally crossing our borders, many of them obviously with somewhat spurious claims on common sense grounds, and yet nonetheless it's impossible to remove them because of human rights. That is deeply, deeply wrong. It's enormously expensive. I mean, we're looking at, I think it was £4.2 billion spent on asylum hotels last year. And it's also dangerous for the refugees themselves. You know, in the last year, I think it was 78 migrants died in the Channel. 225 have died since 2018. Encouraging people to do illegal things because they know they've got a good chance of getting asylum once they get here is a terrible idea. We should actually remember that most refugees are actually in their area of origin, and it is cheaper and easier, both on a cultural and a language basis, to help people in those places. That's exactly what we should do.
But they wouldn't be, look, you know, just to your point, Chris, it's not, I don't think it's criminalising people who come here illegally because they've come here illegally. I presume that this legislation would apply to people who have come here illegally, so they're asylum seekers or people who have broken the law whilst their claim is being, you know, checked, and people who are living here who are foreign nationals who commit crimes. The bit where they've crossed the Channel, they're already here, so I'm presuming it would apply apply to that, would it not?
I think this is a way to try and close that loophole, to make it impossible for someone to make their own way here and then claim asylum. Look, I agree with Guy and Miriam that we do need more safe and legal routes, a fast and fair immigration system.
Safe and legal routes.
But then they'll be illegal, and so
this sounds like it applies to people who are already here who then commit crime here. Does it apply to people for crossing the channel, or does it apply to people who commit crime when they're here?
I think this is one way the Conservatives are trying to get around the challenge they're finding with the European Convention on Human Rights. And we keep saying it was a Labour government that introduced this. It was Winston Churchill that introduced the European Commission on Human Rights, so it's not some kind of leftist agenda. This was seen to be a way that we are in closer relationship with Europe, and we recognise that governments shouldn't mark their own homework when it comes to human rights.
Well, look, we sort of attribute this to the Conservative Party, but I'm pretty sure it's one of a reform policy, actually. Well, listen, thank you very much, Guy Dampier, and also Krish Kandiah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Now, the Prosperity Institute is owned by the Legatum Group, and the group is also one of the lead investors in the holding company of GB News. A really interesting discussion now. I think what's fascinating is so much of this amendment was actually a group of us in Parliament, in the last Parliament, tried to put down these amendments to the Rwanda bill to make sure that we close those loopholes of being able to arrive illegally, to be able to appeal to the Human Rights Act in order to prevent yourself being deported. For example, the chicken nuggets case, those kind of things. And the government under Rishi Sunak refused those amendments, and yet now in opposition, the Conservative Party is trying to bring back those very amendments. So an interesting turn of events.
It is, isn't it? Utter madness. But then they were too busy infighting, so that's why it all went wrong for them. Right, if you just tuned in, welcome. 19 minutes after 12 o'clock. More still to come. This is the next story. The Coast Guard has called off the search for a missing crew member after a ship carrying toxic chemicals collided with the US military jet fuel tanker.
Yes, that crash took place on the North Sea off the coast of East Yorkshire, with emergency services rescuing 36 crew members.
Investigators haven't ruled out foul play following multiple explosions yesterday morning. Let's get the latest with our reporter Anna Riley, who joins us live from the port of Grimsby. Anna, what more can you tell us?
Good afternoon to you both. Well, yes, it's more than 24 hours on now since that collision in the North Sea, just 13 miles off the East Yorkshire coast. You mentioned just there about the toxic chemicals that were potentially being carried on the Portuguese vessel So Long. Well, the most recent update we've had in is that from Ernest Russ, the owner of the container ship So Long, that statement confirms that no sodium cyanide was on board the vessel as had been feared. So some good news to come out of this in a way, that concerns around that potentially toxic and hazardous chemical potentially leaking into the sea. That's not going to happen, as that container ship was not carrying that. So in terms of what we know, well, we're here at the port of Grimsby. That's where these 36 mariners were brought to safety yesterday. Sadly, one crew member of the So Long has not been found. The Coast Guard called off that search and rescue last night. What we do know is that a preliminary investigation has been launched. That the incident happened at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. It involved the US oil tanker called the Stena Immaculate. It was carrying jet fuel for the US military. It was at anchor out on the North Sea when the So Long cargo ship collided with it at a rate of 16 knots, around 20 miles an hour. That caused an instant explosion, fires to ignite on both ships. A mayday call was made and the sailors abandoned ship. We know that the fires are still raging as well. The efforts are being made to try and still put out those flames, and of course questions being asked as to exactly why this happened. The US authorities, the White House, have said that they suspect foul play, so that's something that needs to be investigated. Whether it was a mechanical malfunction, whether it was an issue with the autopilot on the So Long vessel, whether the weather had anything to do with it. There was inclement weather on that day, it was cloudy, so all these things need to be investigated. But as that fire's still raging, it's hard for these investigators to actually get aboard these vessels and locate the equivalent of the black box docks to find out exactly what happened. Of course, they'll be interviewing witnesses as well, the sailors on those ships, as to what happened. And then it's the environmental cleanup that's going on as well. We know that these massive explosions caused the jet fuel to leak from the vessel, and of course that's got concerns for the environment, for the marine life, for seabirds around here. So all that needs to be taken into consideration, and we'll have more updates for you as they come in.
Anna Riley, thank you very much.
Well, if you want to continue watching the latest on that situation, then you can scan the QR code, which is on the bottom of your screen now, or head to GBN2 on YouTube.
23 minutes after 12 o'clock. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Paris migrant mayhem. 450 migrant squatters take over a theatre in France, with neighbours facing financial ruin.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Why do you want to do this, my friend?
I want to raise awareness about what disabled people can do and try and change some perceptions on what is possible.
So, Craig, what happened to you when you were 18 years old? Because your life changed forever, didn't it, in Afghanistan?
It did, yeah. I was on routine foot patrol, and several feet in front of me was a commando IED. They triggered it, and yeah, triple amputee. Both legs and only the one hand.
And how did those injuries change your life, Craig?
Oh, yeah, in the worst way possible. You know, everything I loved was taken away from me. Windsurfing taken away, guitar taken away. Couldn't even hug my parents or speak in the first initial few weeks. So it was a complete flip upside down.
I'm wheelchair bound and I have been for 2 years, and I only concentrate on what I can't do. And you're actually coming at this from the opposite way, and you're saying, if you're disabled, these are the things you can do.
I'd say to you, focus on how you can't do those things. So how to actually achieve the things that you're not saying you can do. And if you give it a bit of time and thought, I'm pretty sure you'd achieve it.
Wow. And then what's led you to this challenge now? I mean, travelling 6,000 nautical miles from Mexico to Japan by yourself.
My dad taught me how to sail when I was very young, and that lasted up until I joined the army. When I was injured, the doctors saying, you know, look, sports are pretty much a no-go. My dad refused to take that as a thing. He gave me the details to the Paralympic sailing coach, and then I was in the Paralympic team for a little while. I didn't go to any games, but that reintroduced me to sailing and what was possible in the sailing world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. A historic theatre in Paris has been occupied by migrants for almost 4 months, has now put serious financial strain on neighbouring businesses.
Well, the theatre became a shelter for 450 migrants who were previously living rough in the streets of the French capital.
Despite growing concerns, police have been instructed not to carry out forced evictions.
Well, we're joined now by our GB News reporter, Dougie Beattie, live from Paris. Bonjour. How are things in Paris? It doesn't look particularly sunny today. Bonjour. There.
No, it's very cold, actually. But we are in an absolutely beautiful part of Paris. Nice theatres and huge architecture. I mean, it is lovely. It is absolutely lovely. But there is a problem here, and it was to do with homeless migrants that were left sleeping in parks such as this one beside us. And unfortunately, a group of young Parisians decided that they would take action on this. And they brought all these homeless migrants, into the theatre behind us. And when they got them in there, they said, well, just stay here and they'll have to home you somewhere else. And that has happened over 4 months ago. It started off with a couple of hundred. We're now told there's 500 migrants living in this theatre behind us. And I did ask those that are involved in this, out of these young Parisians, to come forward and talk to us on camera, but they didn't want to ask the question of who was paying for it. And that's the main thing, not only in Paris, but the whole way across Europe, is who will foot the bill. And they didn't seem to be able to piece together that businesses here that are suffering because the theatre's no longer operating, and all the coffee shops and restaurants along here where you would normally go to the theatre and then go for something to eat, well, they're not getting the same footfall anymore because, of course, the theatre's no longer open. And they didn't want to know about that, but what they did say to me was, well, if it's hurting commerce, well, then it's working. And that is a problem that they don't seem to see later on in life, how that will play out and how the taxpayer's pocket will actually have to pay for it. Now, when we were here earlier on, there was about 3 arrests took place by undercover police, and they had arrested people that we believe came out of that theatre, and they were not 18 years of age, they were a lot older than that. And of course, this is really at the bottom of it, because most of these migrants are claiming that they're under 18, they're therefore minors and have to be protected by French law. And that is really what they're playing on. And the people that run the theatre are basically the local council. They're now saying they're under financial stress, and the area in and around here is also under the same financial stress, and there doesn't seem to be any way out of this for anybody involved in it.
Well, thank you, Dougie.
I was just going to ask you, Dougie, so these people were invited in, and what's the plan for the young people? Where are the young people who let them in? Are they not going to face some sort of punishment? And what did they expect would happen? I'm just wondering why they invited them in, and what was their motivation, and would they think the people were meant to stay, or did they plan for them to go?
Well, they invited them in because they said, under French law, if you're minors, you have to be protected and looked after. And if they brought them into a public building, left them in the public building, basically squatting, that the public would have to look after them. And I'm sorry to say, it actually seems to be working, because the police have been told not to go in and remove them, and meanwhile the theatre behind, of course, is suffering and everybody else is suffering. But we wanted to put these people on camera, the original young people, and they refused to come on.
I wondered. All right, thank you very much. Really good to speak to you, Dougie Beattie.
Well, Dougie in Paris there. Well, let's stay in London now and cross to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's fresh out of the lobby at number 10. Chris, can you bring us up to date with some British politics?
Well, that's right. The Cabinet meeting earlier, it was opened by Sir Keir Starmer talking to Cabinet about this crash by these vessels off Hull. They're saying that there appears to be no suggestion of foul play. That's what number 10 are saying this lunchtime. Investigation ongoing. We're expecting a statement in the House of Commons imminently from the Transport Minister, Mike Cain. The government here is working with US and Portuguese authorities, because those were the 2 flags on those vessels, and also working to assess the impact on wildlife. It's quickly turning into what could be an environmental issue for this country, particularly the east coast of England. There's an update coming later from a meeting between Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, and the head of the Marine Maritime Coast Guard. That was what happened today in Cabinet. There's also there's a big intervention coming from the Prime Minister this Thursday to mark your diaries. The government's going to set out its plans to make the state work better for ordinary Brits, to ensure that they want to reshape the British state, make it work better, less costly, maybe take powers away from quangos and regulators, give them back to ministers. We saw the row in recent days with the Sentencing Council and other issues too. In a way, there's a feeling, I think, that regulators haven't got the British public
closely aligned to where they are, and also from promoting more growth. They want to have more active and agile state. All that happening later this week, probably Thursday. And on Kyle Clifford, he wouldn't face his victims today in court. John Hunt, the former BBC racing commentator, wanted to see him, look at him eye to eye. That wasn't allowed. The government says today they will change the law with a new bill coming forward in the summer, which will allow officers to use reasonable force to force cowardly killers who refuse to look victims in the eye to face their sentencing in court, in the dock. So the behaviour of Carl Clifford that happened today will not happen again if this law change goes through.
All right, Christopher Hope, thank you very much. GB News political editor outside Downing Street. Thank you very much.
And we'll be discussing lots more of that British politics later on. But you're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, of course, we'll get the sentencing for triple murderer Carl Clifford. He's refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner and her sister with a crossbow and their mother with a 10-inch butchering knife. We'll be live at Cambridge Crown Court after the latest news headlines.
Nana, Miriam, thank you. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. A breaking update from that North Sea crash now, as you just heard with Christopher Hope. So Long, one of those vessels involved in that crash, has no containers on board laden with sodium cyanide, its owner said a short time ago. Fires are still raging on off the coast of East Yorkshire today after that ship collided with a US military jet fuel tanker yesterday. So Long's owner, Ernst Russ, said that 4 empty containers on that vessel previously contained the hazardous chemical, and these containers will continue to be monitored. The Coast Guard called off the search for a missing crew member last night, and Number 10 are saying this lunchtime that there is currently no suggestion of foul play following those explosions yesterday morning. The crash took place on the North Sea off the coast of East Yorkshire, with emergency services rescuing 36 crew members. Local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. The family of Louise, Hannah and Carol Hunt have been reading victim impact statements a short time ago ahead of the sentencing of triple killer Kyle Clifford. Clifford has refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner Louise and her sister Hannah with a crossbow and their mother Carol with a 10-inch butchering knife. He was found guilty of the rape of Louise Hunt last week following a trial at Cambridge Crown Court. The court was also told today that it was no coincidence the killer turned to Andrew Tate the night before the attack. The sentencing will take place later today. At least 3 people have been killed in the Moscow region after Ukraine reportedly launched its largest drone attack on Russia in 3 years, with the Kremlin accusing Ukraine of targeting apartment blocks. The attack, which was comprised of at least 91 drones, comes as peace talks between the US and Ukraine are underway in Saudi Arabia today. It also follows reports that President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, plans to travel to Russia and meet President Vladimir Putin this week. And Manchester United have announced plans to build the biggest stadium in the country, worth £2 billion. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who co-owns the club, has said he wants to build, quote, the greatest stadium in the world. United have confirmed their intention to pursue a new stadium as, quote, the centrepiece of the regeneration of the Old Trafford area, supporting the government's growth agenda. According to reports, it would seat 100,000 football fans, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe has held a press conference today about those plans. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Barhead and Kilmarnock because of a signalling problem. On the M6 in Lancashire, the outside lane is closed each way for repairs after an accident yesterday between junctions 31 and 32 between Samlesbury and the M55, causing delays. Also in Lancashire, the A675 is closed each way along Bolton Road at Abbey Village, where a car's overturned, causing queues. Buses replaced trains between Cleethorpes and Barton on Humber because of a faulty train. There are severe delays to Nottingham Express transit services. On the M5 in the West Midlands, the northbound exit to the southbound M6 is partly blocked for an investigation. In Kent, the A249 is closed along Briar Way in Queenborough for an investigation. On the M5 near Bristol, 2 lanes are closed southbound after an accident between junctions 19 and 20 from Portishead to Clevedon. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's fast approaching 40 minutes after 12 o'clock. This is GB News. Now, triple killer Carl Clifford faces life behind bars as he's sentenced for murdering 3 women in July last year.
Yes, the 26-year-old who has refused to attend court for the entire sentencing killed his former girlfriend Louise Hunt and her sister Hannah with a crossbow after he'd already killed their mother Carol in what was described as a brutal knife attack.
Carl Clifford will also be sentenced for raping Louise in what prosecutors described as a violent sexual act of spite.
Well, to tell us more is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White, who has been following the sentencing at Cambridge Crown Court. Mark, could you bring us up to date with the proceedings in court?
Well, the very latest, just within the last couple of minutes, the court has now risen. Mr. Justice Benathan has retired to consider his sentence, and he will reconvene the court again at 2 o'clock this afternoon to hand down that sentence. Just in the last few minutes, we've heard from both the prosecution and the defence here in aggravating factors and mitigating factors. Of course, the aggravating factors set out by the prosecution about the callous nature of the crime that was committed back on the 9th of July last year when Kyle Clifford entered that home in Bushey in Hertfordshire and murdered his former girlfriend Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt, and their mother Carol. The 2 sisters, of course, we know were killed with the use of a crossbow, and the mother, Carol, was stabbed to death with a butcher's knife. Absolutely horrific events, which over the last couple of hours we've been hearing these victim impact statements about the way in which that crime has left those surviving members of the family. We heard from the father, father of both Louise and Hannah, the husband of Carol Hunt as well, talking about really just how devastated he had felt. He's a BBC horse racing commentator, well known to the British public. He was at work that day when these murders were committed back in the family home, and he spoke of Kyle Clifford as someone who he believed was a psychopath that tried to present himself outwardly as a normal functioning individual, but he was far from that. And indeed, John Hunt said of his crimes that the red carpet will be rolled out for him in hell.
OK, Mark, well, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. We'll keep you up to date on all of that, and we'll probably come back to Mark very soon. That is Mark White. He is the GB News security editor, Homeland Security editor.
Now, in the last few minutes, the Metropolitan Police have announced that it's launched an investigation into allegations of an attack and threats, I should say, a series of verbal threats allegedly made by suspended Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe.
Now, the MP for Great Yarmouth has been accused of making threats of physical violence towards the party's chairman, Zia Youssef, allegations he strongly denies.
Well, here to tell us more is GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, this is a row that is really erupting in Westminster, and the idea that Reform have reported Rupert Lowe to the police for verbal threats seemed incredible, yet it does seem that this is now progressing.
Yes, indeed. So I'll just read out the statement. The Metropolitan Police have now launched an investigation into an allegation of a series of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. We assume that to be Rupert Lowe. Our original statement referred to alleged threats made in December 2024. We would like to clarify that when this matter was reported to us, it referred to a series of alleged threats made between December 2024 and February 2025. Further inquiries are ongoing at this stage. So cast your mind back to Friday afternoon when this whole thing exploded. First of all, with the allegations of bullying made by two women in Rupert Lowe's office, quickly followed by the news that Reform had gone to the police with allegations of verbal threats that Rupert Lowe allegedly made to Zia Youssef, the party chairman. Now, the whip was swiftly withdrawn from Rupert Lowe, and since then there has been this almighty war of words between Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage and all the remaining Reform MPs. Bear in mind there were 5, there's only 4 of them left. And last night, Rupert Lowe gave an online interview in which he described himself as a poppy that stood up too tall and has been chopped down. Bear in mind, of course, that all this came to a head the day after Rupert Lowe had spoken to our own Andrew Pearce and been a bit critical of Nigel Farage, Reform leader, describing him as not the Messiah and not convinced that he was the right person to lead them. And I think Rupert Lowe will certainly believe that he has had a target on his back ever since back in January, when Elon Musk was thinking about donating money to Reform. At some point, Elon Musk decided that Nigel Farage was not the man for the job, said so on X. Nigel Farage isn't up to it, he said, and then later said, oh, this guy Rupert Lowe, he looks like he might be good.
And that was shortly after the interview with Nigel, actually, on my show, that then went viral. And Elon Musk himself retweeted it. Interesting. Well, listen, we'll keep you up to date with all of this. Catherine Forster, you'll be back, I presume, to tell us more. But if you are in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine? Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Most of us will see some decent sunny spells today, but there are also quite a few showers around, especially in the north and east. At the moment, we do have a northeasterly flow across the country, and it's this that's bringing those showers, and it's also bringing some cold air across us, which is why there's a chillier feel to things for most of us. That being said, some decent sunny spells on offer, especially towards the west and towards the south. Further north and east, a greater chance of catching some of those showers, especially across parts of eastern Scotland. Here, some of them turning wintry, some sleet, some snow over the higher ground. Temperatures in the north similar to perhaps a degree or so higher than yesterday, but factor in the wind, it's going to feel chillier. And in the south, temperatures are dropping compared to yesterday about 4 to 5 degrees in some places, so a chillier feel for sure. As we go through the end of the day, sticking with the showery theme across many parts of Scotland, all the time it's areas exposed to that northeasterly wind where we'll see the most frequent showers, but they are going to push their way further southwards as we go through the end of the day and overnight. So showers feeding into Northern Ireland, across northern England, and some showers pushing further south across parts of England and Wales as well. That being said, as we go overnight, yes, we'll see a few more showers in places, but also some clear spells in between those showers. And with that colder air, the clear spells, we are going to see temperatures dipping. So a touch of frost quite likely in a few places, and where we see any showers clearing to clearer skies, that does bring the risk of some icy patches first thing tomorrow morning. In the south in particular, it is going to be a chillier start than of late. As we go through tomorrow then, more showers than we'll have seen through today. Some of them could be heavy. There's the risk of a bit of hail, a bit of thunder, maybe some growlpool at times, especially towards the east and northeast of England in particular. Elsewhere, there will be some bright sunny spells in between the showers, especially towards the west, but temperatures, well, they are going to be even lower than today for many, so feeling chillier. Bye-bye.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 1 and bin workers in Birmingham are set to go on indefinite strike over pay and working conditions.
Yes, the walkouts, which began in January, are due to go ahead despite reports of overflowing bins and rat infestations.
Nice. Members of the Unite union voted for today's all-out strike last month.
Well, joining us now, GB News reporter Steve Bennett. Steve, tell us more about this. I bet it's causing a real stink. It's not funny, is it?
Yes, it certainly is. 350 Birmingham bin workers are now officially on all-out strike, and it all comes down to the fact that a position of Waste and Recycling Collection Officer has been made redundant, which Unite say is a safety critical role. As part of a 4-person bin lorry, they deal with live issues, they look after the crew themselves and the British public. Birmingham City Council deny this and say that removing that position just brings waste collection in line with other local authorities. Now, earlier on, I caught up with people on the picket line, including Unite rep, and here's what they had to say.
Unfortunately, since November, we've had to take industrial action ballot just to get conversations going with the council, and that's why we've had to escalate the action to get some movement from them.
The council need to value us. We do the whole of Birmingham. Everybody produces rubbish. Come on, let's be fair. Let's pay the men fairly. They work in all weathers, every day of the year. We worked all through COVID. We were the only department in the council to work through COVID. We got no extra money for that, no extra pay. We put our families, our lives at risk, and now the council see fit to try and cut our money.
I mean, it's really, really uncomfortable. One thing also that the public needs to realise is that majority of the bin men here, we're Birmingham residents too. I mean, my recycling hasn't been collected since the start of the strikes. And also with the household rubbish, we've been getting very unregular collections, just like I imagine majority of the Birmingham public are as well.
Yes, so Unite say that 150 workers are set to lose up to £8,000 a year if they're forced to retrain into other positions. Birmingham City Council have responded by offering voluntary redundancy to those positions affected, with a settlement thought to be around £7,000, which some workers have accepted. Now, the other issue is using agency staff to plug the gap of these striking workers, which Unite say is unlawful and undermines the strikes. As you see behind me, the rubbish is piling high and local residents are at breaking point, with 4,000 having signed an online petition for Birmingham City Council to end these strikes. So it really is a testing time for the locals in this area. It's a very highly insightful area. The locals are very passionate about it, as you saw on the picket line there, and this could go on for months, even into the summer, as some people are predicting. So lots to be done. Hopefully they can work something out. In the meantime, I'll keep you updated. Back to you both in the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Steve Bennett there. He's reporting on the bin story. How often do your bins get collected?
2 weekly, I think, which is just about OK. But any less than that would not be possible, and certainly never is not an option. But it's all part of Birmingham City Council going bust because of that equal pay claim a couple of years ago. So,
well, listen, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming on today's show. Don't go anywhere. First, let's get an update with your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Whilst by the weekend things are looking dry with high pressure building, before then we do have some chilly weather and plenty of showers. All of that is being pushed down on a brisk northerly wind, which is adding to the chilly feel to things today, and we are going to continue to see plenty of showers piling their way in. In fact, the showers are going to become a bit more widespread as we go through this evening and overnight, pushing further southwards. That being said, there will be some dry and clear weather in between those showers, and with that then we are going to see our temperatures taking a bit of a dip. It's going to be markedly chillier than recent nights across southern areas, low single figures for quite a few places, and where we get the clear skies, a touch of frost is quite likely. Also watch out for some icy stretches first thing tomorrow morning, where we get any showers clearing to clear skies, perfect ingredients for some icy conditions, so do take care on the roads first thing. But otherwise, across southern areas, a few showers to watch out for during the start of the day, a bit brighter across more central areas and across Northern Ireland too. Plenty of showers though from the start across eastern parts of Scotland and northeast England. As we go through the day, those showers are going to continue. They're perhaps going to be a bit more frequent than we'll have seen through today, and a bit more widespread too. Some of them could be a bit heavy. There could even be the odd rumble of thunder, maybe a bit of hail, a bit of growlpool mixed in with them as well. Some winteriness, some sleet, some snow over modest high ground. We're talking 200 to 300 metres, that kind of thing. Further west, across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, greater chance of staying largely dry with some bright sunny spells, and temperatures for all a little bit lower than today, so feeling pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. More showers to come as we go through the end of the day, especially towards more central and eastern areas. All the time further west, we're staying that little bit drier. And that's the theme into Thursday as well. West is best when it comes to any dry, bright weather. More showers by Friday, but like I said, into the weekend, high pressure building means it's set to turn drier.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but 2 brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I do think that there is extremities in how this has been approached with, you can't eat kebabs anymore. The Climate Change Committee isn't talking about banning meat. It's talking about reducing meat, perhaps having some incentives for plant-based diets. It's talking about doing small changes, not phasing out everything, doing small changes to move to a net zero future, a more sustainable future.
How can me not having a lodged on a combat, I don't know, China opening 1 coal-fired power station a week? Come on, this is pointless.
Well, there is other things that have been advised beyond just, reducing our meat consumption. There's things around the tax around flying and aviation, producing less fossil fuel imports and switching to more renewable power, upgrading the grid. There's a lot of other advisories collectively that moves us towards a net zero future. There is a few, of course, we can go down the route of, they can't eat the kebab anymore, but there's far more other things at play than just the kebab meat.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, that man again, is just laughing at all this. Drill, baby, drill. You're not telling me that his cabinet are going to chow down on some quinoa. This is a red meat country leading the way, and if we had half a brain about us, we'd be drilling ourselves.
I come from an energy industry background. I work for a data intelligence company, Mapstand, as well. And what we are seeing is that what's happening in America is actually quite short-term thinking. It's not long-term thinking. Whereas in places in China, you're seeing a lot of innovation and green innovation because there is a huge economic opportunity.
Yeah, because they're selling it all to the West and polluting their atmosphere. We're offshoring our carbon footprint, and they're selling the solar panels back to us because we're the mugs.
We're also able to be the producers and also change our own energy so that we can also compete.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of March. I'm Nana Acquia.
And I'm Miriam Cates. Well, deporting foreign criminals, the Conservatives push for all offenders from overseas to be removed from Britain, as it's revealed that a quarter of people convicted of sex crimes are from foreign countries.
Kevin Badenoch shows her teeth on migration policy as MPs start to debate Labour's Borders Bill. We're going to deport any foreign criminals who are here in our jails, but why not do it when they're 14 years in power? More next.
Triple murderers sentenced. Carl Clifford, who murdered 2 sisters with a crossbow and their mum with a knife, also found guilty of raping one of the girls, is being sentenced today at Cambridge Crown Court.
Well, in court, victim impact statements were read out by family members of those who died at the hands of this crossbow killer. He was described as a psychopath, and there would, he was told, be a red carpet rolled out for him in hell. He'll be sentenced in just over an hour's time.
And Angela Rayner's land grab. Farmers could be forced to sell fields for less than their potential value if they're seized to build new homes or hospitals. But is this even workable?
Dubbed the greatest show on turf, the Cheltenham races begin today.
It is Champion Day, day one here at Cheltenham. I've donned my cap and plenty other people have too. Crowd still piling in, ready for that first race in 20 minutes' time.
I don't think either of us are horse racing experts, are we, Nana?
I do a very good horse impression there. I can.
What about a racing horse?
I haven't done it for a while. My lips are dry. but
it's a tradition. You know, it's a big part of the traditional British sporting calendar, though, isn't it? So. Not keen.
I can't think of anything worse. I used to go to the races, and what I would do is I would just look at the colours of the outfits they were wearing, but I'd watch them on there's like a pre-track that they walk around on before they go on the thing, and then I'd look at the way they were moving, and then I'd go with the colours and movement. Yes. And the last time I went to the races, I actually made an absolute fortune.
Wow, well, there you go. You've obviously got the trick. Maybe you could give us some of your tips later based on the colours of the
colours and movement. Very pretty outfit. Works really well.
Well, let us know if you're a fan of horse racing or you want to send us your comment on anything else that we've been talking about today. Just go to gbnews.com/your say. I can get the words out. Anyway, first of all, we've got your news headlines with Katie.
Nana, Miriam, thank you and good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 1. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. A breaking update from that North Sea crash now. Solong, one of the vessels involved in a crash in the North Sea, has no containers on board laden with sodium cyanide, its owner said a short time ago. Those fires aboard the vessels have now greatly diminished off the east coast of Yorkshire today after that ship collided with a US military jet fuel tanker yesterday. Solong's owner, Ernst Russ, said that 4 empty containers on that vessel previously contained the hazardous chemical, and these containers will now continue to be monitored. The Coast Guard called off the search for a missing crew member last night after 36 people were rescued. Number 10 are saying this lunchtime that there is currently no suggestion of foul play following those explosions yesterday morning. Local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. Another breaking update, as you've been hearing, the Metropolitan Police has announced it has launched an investigation into allegations of a series of verbal threats allegedly made by suspended Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe. A statement released this lunchtime said, quote, "The Metropolitan Police have now launched an investigation into an allegation of a series of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. Our original statement referred to alleged threats made in December 2024. We would like to clarify that when this matter was reported to us, it referred to a series of alleged threats made between December 2024 and February 2025. Further inquiries are ongoing and Rupert Lowe denies those allegations. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. The family of Louise, Hannah and Carol Hunt have been reading victim impact statements a short time ago ahead of the sentencing of triple killer Kyle Clifford. Clifford has refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner Louise and her sister Hannah with a crossbow and their mother Carol with a 10-inch butchering knife. Clifford was found guilty of the rape of Louise Hunt last week following a trial at Cambridge Crown Court. The court was also told today that it was no coincidence the killer turned to Andrew Tate the night before the attack. That sentencing will take place later today. At least 3 people have been killed in the Moscow region after Ukraine reportedly launched its largest drone attack on Russia in 3 years, with the Kremlin accusing Ukraine of targeting apartment blocks. The attack, which was comprised of at least 91 drones, comes as peace talks between the US and Ukraine are underway in Saudi Arabia today. It also follows reports that President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, plans to travel to Russia and meet President Vladimir Putin this week. Manchester United have announced plans to build the biggest stadium in the country, worth £2 billion. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who co-owns the club, has said he wants to build, quote, the greatest stadium in the world. United have confirmed their intention to pursue a new stadium as, quote, the centrepiece of the regeneration of the Old Trafford area, supporting the government's growth agenda. According to reports, it would seat 100,000 football fans, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe has held a press conference today about those plans. Elsewhere, the Conservatives have said they will push for Labour's Borders Bill to be changed to require all foreign nationals convicted of a crime to be deported. The party said they would table an amendment to the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, requiring any foreign national convicted of a crime to be removed from the country, including anyone charged with or convicted of an immigration offence. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith spoke to GB News earlier on.
At a time when our jails are full, where the government's releasing hardened criminals from jail, why keep foreign offenders who should be the responsibility of the countries that they've come from? Why doesn't it happen? Well, very much of that is the interlocking between the human rights system, the legacy that we inherited from Tony Blair and previous governments, and the courts. This whole domain of endless appeals has expanded over time, and that's what Kemi and our Shadow Home Secretary have been talking about.
And His Majesty the King has been trained and refreshed in first response care this morning at an event with the Royal College of Nursing. The King celebrated the 1000th King's Nursing Cadet at the Royal College. The scheme aims to help young people develop essential skills needed to start a career in nursing. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Nana and Miriam.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1, and we're asking, is it time to get tougher on foreign criminals? Well, the Conservative Party has announced that they will table an amendment to the government's immigration legislation that would require all foreign criminals to be removed from the country, including anyone charged with or convicted of an immigration offence.
Now, the party claims that the amendment would also get rid of the threshold of a one-year prison sentence required for removal and the exceptions granted in accordance with the ECHR and modern slavery and asylum laws.
Now, of course, this comes as the number of migrants who have crossed the English Channel so far this year surpasses 4,000. And to tell us more, we've got the GB News political editor Christopher Hope at Westminster. Chris, so the Conservatives have laid these amendments. The bill's due to be debated today. What happens next?
Hi Miriam, hi Nana, that's right. These amendments are being debated over four sitting days in Parliament, I think 2 this week and 2 next week. The idea is to force Labour to vote against them. It's all about creating, it's not going to go through, I could want to disabuse viewers and listeners' notions here. This will not pass into law. Labour will whip against them, but the fact that Labour is whipping against policies which is quite important to the Tory base is a further kind of chipping away at the government's authority. About 10 minutes ago, Kemi Badenoch issued a statement on this. She said, if you enter this country and break our laws, you forfeit your right to be here. That's almost a line from what I expect to be the next Tory manifesto under Kemi Badenoch, where she leads the party into the general election. What these amendments will do, particularly on the issue of criminals, currently if you commit a crime here, you can stay in this country if you're sentenced to less than 1 year in jail if you're a foreigner. They want to end that and also end the exemptions for people who use the European Court of Human Rights to stay here. Of course, that might involve leaving the European Convention of Human Rights, which again is likely to be discussed by the Tory party in a policy discussion over the next 2 years and may go towards that. Certainly Reform UK are keen on that. Already refugee groups are cross about this. Refugee Action is saying it's terrifying, ludicrously unworkable, they say, and blatant political grandstanding. They say it will force people fleeing war zones to be returned to those war zones without that human rights protection. They're also looking, the Tory party, at measures to stop issuing visas to countries that don't take back their citizens by changing Section 24 of the Immigration Act 1971, and also a cap on legal migration. We debated that yesterday on Martin Daubney's show. Now, Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, under some pressure over the Rupert Lowe affair, he's saying that it's shameless posturing by the Tory party. This party party that he says was in charge of the biggest policy failure in modern political history, for which they should never be forgiven. By that he means the huge numbers of people who arrived here legally and illegally over the past 14 years or so. And on this issue of illegal migrants arriving here, the figures this year are startling and worrying for the Labour government. Between the 1st of January and the 9th of March, 2 days ago, 4,131 people arrived here legally over the waterway between the southern England and France. That is a record for the past 8 years, outstrips 3,358 for the same time last year, and so it goes on, 3,250 in 2023, etc. A real problem here for this government. They are hoping that they can use all the ways they're cracking down, working with foreign law enforcement, trying to clear those backlogs. The returns are up by about 21%, but frankly, it's not working. Migrants over in France are coming here, being put up in a hotel, and then often disappearing into the black economy. It's a problem here for Labour. They haven't yet gripped it.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Christopher Hope, there in Westminster. And to discuss these amendments further, we are joined in the studio by the Head of Government Reform and Home Affairs at Policy Exchange, Stephen Webb. Now, Stephen, these are quite chunky amendments if they were to become law, which, as Christopher explained, just it's unlikely. But can you explain for our viewers exactly what these amendments would do and how they would work?
Yes, as you say, there are quite a few of them, and they work quite well together. There's obviously the amendment on offences themselves and taking away the threshold. I think these days you have to work relatively hard to get a 12-month sentence, particularly if you're a first offender. So actually, it's a relatively high threshold at the moment. I think taking that away is quite sensible. Obviously, actually, to be able to remove someone, first you need to be able to be allowed to in law. Secondly, you need to have cooperation from the country to take them back. And that's something there's a separate amendment on that basically says that there must be visa sanctions. Visas must be cut off for countries that don't cooperate with returns, and that's a considerable sharpening of the law at the moment. And then thirdly, there's the human rights side, and that is going to be a difficult area. So what this amendment looks to do is actually simply disapply the Human Rights Act from this whole area of law. That still obviously leaves us a member of the ECHR. It still enables appeals to Strasbourg and so on. So it would very much only be an interim measure, but it recognises that the status quo, as we said in our report, why is it so hard getting immigration numbers down? The status quo at the moment is making it really impossible to remove people, particularly with claims under sort of Article 3, which is all about claims of torture, and Article 8, which is about privacy and family life, where I think the immigration tribunal judges and Strasbourg have pushed the definitions into areas that the general public would just be astonished by.
Foul-tasting chicken nuggets now counts as torture, as we've found out.
But couldn't they then appeal to the ECHR if it's been disapplied? Could they then appeal to a European court if we've disapplied it? Then they could then say, yeah, but it's against my human rights for them to disapply that to me. So could they not do that?
They probably would, which is why I think the sort of the long-term, as we were discussing, the long-term plan to reform or leave the ECHR is an important part of it all as well. That in our paper we suggest a coalition of countries that are equally concerned about. There's plenty of European countries that have got the same concerns that we do. Would be one way of trying to do it, and if reform isn't possible, then the option of leaving absolutely has to be considered.
But how likely is that to be something that we could realistically do? Because first of all, Keir Starmer, he's a human rights lawyer, so he's probably going to be all for it. I doubt any of his front bench will be going against him. So I think this is never going to happen. It's never going to happen, is it?
There's a series of amendments that the opposition put down, some of which, in principle, government doesn't accept opposition amendments anyway, but they might come back with some of their own. There are some, I think, of the Human Rights Act that the government certainly aren't ready for, even though they're getting increasingly anxious about what they're seeing. There are some, I mean, for example, the restrictions on indefinite leave to remain, increasing the eligibility period, requiring you to have earned a significant amount of money and not be on public on welfare. Those are things where, who knows, it's possible the government might move in that direction too, because the sheer wave of numbers that are coming because of the enormous numbers that were granted visas a few years ago, I think the government will recognise that granting ILR to hundreds of thousands of people a year is going to be very, very unpopular.
Now, in these amendments, the way that the Conservatives seem to have written them in order to make sure that anybody who committed a crime could be immediately deported, it's all about removing indefinite leave to remain from anybody who commits a crime. But what about people who have come over, let's say, on a small boat, have not been, or have come on a visa, but have not yet been given indefinite leave to remain, a process that normally takes around 5 years? Is there currently provision to deport people in that situation, so pre-ILR status, to deport people immediately if they commit crimes?
Well, this will, yes, this
that will cover them as well.
Okay. No, absolutely.
So whether you've just arrived or whether you've been here 5 years, 10 years and are under definite. Okay, that's interesting. Now, what's really fascinating politically is that these very amendments, particularly the amendment to disregard the Human Rights Act with relation to immigration cases, were proposed by a number of us former Conservative MPs a year ago, was rejected by the government at the time, and in fact we ended up voting against the bill, 12 of us, because it didn't deal with this claim. And yet now the Conservative Party seems to have done a U-turn. I wonder why that might be.
I think things are moving very quickly in this country, but also in Europe. It's astonishing to see the number of European countries that are now disapplying Schengen, the sort of free movement within the EU, for example, the level of concern there is. I think it's a general, and there are some surprising bedfellows that you see governments, you see left-wing governments in Denmark who have some of the toughest immigration policies, and as a result have done quite well with their electorates. I think it's not surprising, and it's possibly a trend that will continue.
Yeah. What about repeated appeals then? Well, what's the deal with people who appeal once and they get another one, and we are paying for this?
Yeah.
What does it say about that?
I think that's the whole reform effort that's required on both the Human Rights Act and in Strasbourg. The problem that we discuss in our paper is that at the moment the judges are basically invited to retake the decision. So rather than only intervene if it's clearly wrong, the judges are coming in, retaking decisions without understanding the context, without the information they need about the precedents they might be setting or the cost implications. And that's what the Human Rights Act instructs or invites them to do. So whether you disapply it for one area, whether you reform the Human Rights Act generally, you look at the whole way judicial review happens. But these are urgent, these are reforms that do urgently need to happen.
But where does it say that within the Human Rights Act that you have to pay for an appeal? Like, if you've been given a decision, is this not just simply the interpretation of it rather than... Where does it say that you have to continue to pay for the appeals? You're allowed to appeal, but why not? Why can you not just pay for it yourself? You've been given money to do the first one, so we've generously done that. You've failed. We have a right to deport you. You have a right to argue against that, but we don't have a right to pay for it. So why is the interpretation that we should continue to pay for it?
No, it's a reasonable challenge. The argument would be access to justice, having a fair trial. Can you have a fair trial if you're not defended? But clearly we've reached a stage where there's an enormous number. We estimated sort of 4,000 or so immigration advisors, and a very, very significant proportion of those are being ultimately paid for by the taxpayer.
But why would that sort of decision interfere with... Does it need any amendment for that to happen? Because to me that sounds like a perfectly reasonable thing to say, that we give you the right to defend yourself the first time. If we then make a decision that you have to go, you then can defend yourself, but you must pay for it. Why can that not be applied immediately? That's not affecting someone's human rights, or... Could they then appeal to the ECHR again to say that we're appealing because you're not paying for it?
Yeah, they definitely would do that.
But then who would pay for that appeal? Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a circle.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of campaigning groups that are supporting these sorts of appeals, looking to push things out. I think we've got a significant issue with legal aid payments that need to be looked at as well.
Stephen, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you, Stephen Webb from Policy Exchange. Thank you so much for coming in and explaining those amendments to us. Well, moving forward.
I'm sure lots of you had the same questions I have, but what do you think? 21 minutes after 1 o'clock. Next up, triple killer Carl Clifford faces the life behind bars as he's sentenced for murdering 3 women in July last year.
Yes, the 26-year-old who has refused to attend court for all the trial and now sentencing killed his former girlfriend Louise Hunt and her sister Hannah with a crossbow after he'd already killed their mother Carol with a knife.
Carl Clifford will also be sentenced for raping Louise in what prosecutors described as a violent sexual act of spite.
Well, to tell us more is GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White, who's been at Cambridge Crown Court this morning. Mark, what's the latest on the sentencing hearing?
Well, the court has now adjourned while the judge considers the sentence that he will hand down, and it is, I think, very possible that we're looking at a whole life tariff being handed down to Kyle Clifford. Of course, any murder carries with it a mandatory life sentence, but then a judge will decide what the minimum tariff is. In fact, the minimum time that someone should spend in prison before they're eligible for relief. But given the aggravating and horrific circumstances surrounding this murder, the calculating way in which the murders were carried out, the extreme violence and cruelty that was used on the 3 victims as well, it is perfectly possible that this will be a whole life tariff. In other words, that Kyle Clifford will never taste freedom again. Throughout the afternoon, or throughout the morning I should say, what we've heard here are victim impact statements read out, in particular from John Hunt, the well-known racing commentator for the BBC, who is was a husband of Carol Hunt, one of the victims, the father of both Louise and Hannah Hunt, the other 2 victims of Kyle Clifford. And he expressed, I think, his frustration really that Kyle Clifford did not attend court. He was given the opportunity repeatedly to attend court for sentencing, even via video link. He would not do that, and the judge ruled that he wasn't going to have him manacled and dragged before a video link in his prison cell, because he said the spectacle of doing that to a man in a wheelchair, because he is now wheelchair bound because he tried to kill himself after those murders back in July of last year and suffered devastating injuries as a result. Both that particular look, but also the disruption that would cause to the proceedings when the court wanted to hear those victim impact statements. The judge, Mr. Justice Bonathan, said that he wasn't prepared to order this man to be manacled and dragged before that camera. So instead, John Hunt told him effectively what he thought of him, that, you know, that he was callous and cowardly and vindictive, that he tried to pass himself off as a normal functioning human being, but in fact he was a psychopath. And John Hunt also said that there would be a red carpet rolled out for him in hell. We also heard from Amy Hunt, the oldest sister of both Louise and Hannah, saying how she was so absolutely devastated by the murders of her sisters and her mother, and her hope is that they would be remembered for the strong, wonderful women that they were, and not for what Kyle Clifford did to them.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. That's Mark White listening to the sentencing for Kyle Clifford. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yeah, so Red Devils revamp. Manchester United unveil plans for a new £2 billion stadium, which will seat 100,000 fans, overtaking Wembley.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I ended up being hospitalised, and I was diagnosed with it within the first few days of being in hospital. I was in hospital for 2 months, and I came out about 13 months ago, something like that. And I realised that there are people that aren't as lucky as me that don't have that platform to be able to talk about it, bring it out in the public, and deal with the stigma, because there is still a stigma.
A lot of people don't really know what bipolar is. So in you, Heston, how did it manifest itself?
It's funny because before the diagnosis, I mean, everything, many things, from thinking the TV was talking to me to hallucinating stuff. The downside is suicidal thoughts, which seemed normal at the time. The upside is the thing, there's grandiosity, somewhere between Superman and Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Save the world, love everybody, everything is fantastic. And then it comes crashing down. It's a bit like a toddler, you know, an overexcited child. And when a kid gets overexcited, and then something happens, and then they start crying.
Wow. So massive highs, big lows.
Yeah, but I thought everything was normal. It's only now that I've come out the other side, so to speak, that I look back and can see some of the character traits. I mean, my patience levels were almost non-existent before. I'm a lot more patient. I'm talking much slower. I was talking very quickly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's 27 minutes past 1 and Manchester United have announced plans to build the biggest stadium in the country worth £2 billion.
It'll be built on club-owned land adjacent to Old Trafford and will seat 100,000 fans.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who co-owns the club, I should say, has said that he wants to build the greatest stadium in the world. So let's get more on this with our football writer, Harry Harris. Harry, these are very, very ambitious plans, aren't they? But what will happen to Old Trafford, which, of course, is an iconic building?
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's certain fans of a certain age, generational, been visiting and enjoying their football at places like Old Trafford. But so they have been a lot of old stadiums in English football that have been demolished in recent years. Take, the Emirates Stadium and the new White Hart Lane. Upton Park has been demolished. From those ashes has risen such magnificent stadiums, particularly the one at Spurs. And, you will weep for the fact that Old Trafford will be demolished. But look what's going to happen in its place. You just got to look at what's happened at Spurs and just be upbeat and joyous that this new stadium would be such an iconic venue for English football.
Mm. Yeah, you see, the thing is, I used to support Manchester United many years ago when they kept winning, but they keep losing now. I mean, where are Manchester United these days? Do you support them, Harry?
No, I support Spurs, and I wept when the old lane was demolished. I've been there many years as a boy. But look at the stadium now. But the one lesson from that to Man United need to learn, it's going to take 5 years to build this stadium, is what happened to Spurs when they built their £1 billion stadium. And, a lot of people were critical of Daniel Levy on having this magnificent venue, but they haven't invested as much as the fans would want in the team. And this is the danger over the next 5 years when Man United have to finance this stadium and look for new ways to do that. So, the fans would really swap that such magnificent £2 billion stadium for a team that was back at the pinnacle of world football. I think they would. I think they want a winning team.
Now, what do you think the significance is of wanting to build the largest stadium in Britain? Do you think this is... do you think they will fill the stadium, or is this just to kind of get a bit of publicity?
No, it will fill the stadium. Trust me, there's 1 billion Man United fans out there, and people can't get season tickets even now with a losing team. So no, and no matter how overpriced those tickets will be, they will fill that stadium. In fact, funnily enough, Spurs built their new stadium because what was happening at the existing Old Trafford, that they had massive gates generating huge sums at every home game. Spurs had, virtually half that amount of money being generated at home games. Now they have £5 million revenue per game. And Man United are now looking at Spurs and saying, look, we need to replicate what they've done. But they have to also invest in the team. Now, to do that balance has never proved to be easy. It wasn't with Arsenal in the years they built the Emirates, and it hasn't been with Spurs since they built their new stadium. So how are Man United going to create that balance?
All right, listen, Harry Harris, thank you very much. He's a football writer. Now, we want to make your spring spectacular in our latest Great British giveaway with your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. But that's not all.
You'll also win not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and a designer bag. Want to look and feel the part this spring? Here's all the details you need.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show.
Rainerland grab. That's actually doing Rainerland. It's sort of sounded like Earth, Wind and Fire, like Boogie Wonderland, but it's not as good. Farmers could be forced to sell fields for less than their potential value if they're seized to build new homes or hospitals. But is this even workable? After your latest news headlines.
Nana, Miriam, thank you. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. An update from that North Sea crash now. Long, one of those vessels involved in that crash, has no containers on board laden with sodium cyanide, its owner said a short time ago. Those fires aboard the vessels have now greatly diminished off the coast of East Yorkshire today, after that ship collided with a US military jet fuel tanker yesterday. Long's owner, Ernst Russ, said that 4 empty containers on that vessel previously contained the hazardous chemical, and these containers will continue to be monitored. The Coast Guard called off the search for a missing crew member last night after 36 people were rescued. Number 10 are saying this lunchtime that there is currently no suggestion of foul play following those explosions yesterday morning. Local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. As you've been hearing, the Metropolitan Police has announced it has launched an investigation into allegations of a series of verbal threats allegedly made by suspended Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe. A statement released this lunchtime said, quote, "The Metropolitan Police have now launched an investigation into an allegation of a series of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. Our original statement referred to alleged threats made in December 2024. We'd like to clarify that when this matter was reported to us, it referred to a series of alleged threats made between December 2024 and February 2025. Further inquiries are ongoing, and Rupert Lowe denies all of those allegations. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. The family of Louise, Hannah and Carol Hunt have been reading victim impact statements a short time ago ahead of the sentencing of triple killer Kyle Clifford. Clifford has refused to attend his sentencing for the murders of his former partner Louise and her sister Hannah with a crossbow, and their mother Carol with a 10-inch butchering knife. Clifford was found guilty of the rape of Louise Hunt last week following a trial at Cambridge Crown Court. The court was also told today that it was no coincidence the killer turned to Andrew Tate the night before the attack. The sentencing will take place later today. And just briefly, another brief breaking update. A man whose body was pulled from the river after his wife was shot dead outside a pub in Kent on Valentine's Day has now been formally identified. Edward Smith was found in the River Thames in Rainham, Essex on the 7th of March, Kent police said. His car was found abandoned near the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge at Dartford in the hours after the shooting, and investigators believed he entered the water there. Lisa Smith was shot near the Three Horseshoes pub, where she'd met a friend on the 14th of February. A full inquest into her death will be held in September. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2929 and €1.1847. The price of gold is £2,249.86 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,551 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replace ScotRail train services between Barhead and Kilmarnock because of a signalling problem. In Northumberland, the A189 is blocked each way for an investigation between Bebbside and East Speakburn. There are delays of up to 40 minutes with some cancelled trains between Rochdale and Clitheroe because of a signalling problem. Buses replace trains between Cleethorpes and Barton-on-Humber because of a faulty train. There are severe delays on the Nottingham Express Transit. In Suffolk, the A12 is partly blocked northbound by an accident between Brightwell Corner and Martlesham Heath, causing queues. On the M25 in Surrey, the outside lane is closed clockwise. Just after junction 12 for the M3 after an accident, with 4 miles of queues starting about a mile before junction 11 at Chertsey. And in Hampshire, the A27 is blocked by an accident at Bursledon, east of Southampton, causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 40 minutes after 1 o'clock. Farmers and landowners, I'm about to call myself Nana there.
We know you know.
Yeah, farmers and landowners could face a tough blow under the government's new planning and infrastructure bill.
Well, councils will gain the power to seize land for new homes, hospitals or schools, but pay only its current value, far less than its potential worth if it were to have planning permission.
For farmers, that means fields could be sold for a fraction of what they could expect under the old system.
So is this a fair trade-off for development? Well, we're joined now by the GB News political correspondent, Catherine Forster, in the studio. Now, Catherine, this is quite a headline-grabbing initiative, but there is already some provision in law for this idea of paying farmers what the land is worth now, rather than what's called the hope value, what it could be worth if it was to be developed.
Yes, indeed. So this is potentially bad news for farmers, and it's worth saying this is just one small fraction of this planning and infrastructure bill that the government have just introduced to Parliament in the last few minutes. There'll be a debate on it and a vote on it tomorrow. So at the moment, if you're sitting on land and the government wants to buy it for whatever reason, they've got to pay you what's called the hope value, which is the value that it would have if you had planning approval to develop that land, not what it is actually worth as it stands at the moment. Now, what this new bill proposes to do is change that. So basically, you'll get the value of the land that it is at now. You would only get the higher value if you'd already got planning approval to build on that land. Now, the government will say that's because the country can't afford it. The taxpayer can't afford to be paying vastly inflated amounts. And of course, this is one of the reasons why people have liked to invest in land, because it's been seen as a great asset and you can cash it in and get a lot of money. Of course, this is potentially bad news for farmers who've been hit very hard already with these proposed inheritance tax changes. But I think it's worth having a little look at what Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said about the bill more broadly a little bit earlier.
What we're doing is streamlining the planning system so that we can make it clearer what we expect. People will be consulted as part of the local planning process, but that we can also lift big infrastructure projects and make sure we get them moving. Far too often it takes years and years and years of going through these archaic processes. We want to streamline it, make it clear what our expectations are, and then deliver for people and get that infrastructure in the houses we desperately need.
Yes, so get Britain building. That was one of the main pledges of this new government. Of course, government after government tend to find that that's much easier said than done.
Catherine, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Catherine. We're joined now by the Director, Centre for Policy Studies, Rob Colville.
Hello.
Rob, welcome to the programme. Now, a lot of people would say this is a perfectly reasonable thing that the Labour Party are planning to do with regard to planning, as other European countries do exactly the same thing. What's the problem with it?
So the overall housing package is really good. There's a lot of really good stuff in it. We need to build more houses, and this absolutely does that. The problem with this particular element of it is it's a combination of two things. Firstly, it's the taking away the hope value from the land. So agricultural land is not worth that much, generally speaking, but as soon as you give planning permission for it, it becomes hugely valuable, because homes are hugely valuable and we don't really give much planning permission. So the places we do give planning permission for become fantastically valuable. The problem comes when you combine that with compulsory purchase. The government can actually just sort of buy the land. So not only, it would be perfectly reasonable for government to say, look, when we give you these planning permissions, your land goes up hugely in value. You shouldn't keep all of that extra value, which we have created by giving you a planning permission. We should, we'll give you a little bit more than the current value, or we'll give you the current market value, or, which is actually what we do at the moment, we will use this increase in value to fund lots of things like new roads, roundabouts, GP surgeries, whatever it is that the community needs. The problem comes when you get a system where the government can effectively just sort of take people's land at agricultural value and then build on it and then get all the value from it, and that's and how exactly that would work and how close we're going to come to that is something we're going to see when the bill is published.
Now, Rob, I understand that under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill that the last government passed, or Act, I should say, there is actually provision to do this, to compulsory purchase a piece of land and only pay current market current value, but that it would require the approval of a minister. Am I right in saying that what this bill would do, what the Labour bill would do, would to be remove the need for that ministerial approval and actually make it much more easy for councils and infrastructure projects to just essentially bulldoze, to use a pun, their way through the system?
So I haven't looked at the exact detail of the new bill because it's only just come out. But yeah, I think this is something which has always been attractive to people in government and to left and some on the right. The thing is, the current proposals are effectively for using it for big national projects. Like if you're trying to, one of the huge problems we had with building HS2, for example, was getting permission to buy every single piece of land. And if you're trying to build a new nuclear reactor, if you're trying to build a new airfield, like these kind of a new town, like these are kind of big pieces of work where you don't want to be held to ransom by individuals who say, oh, yeah, but give me £1 million to make me go away. What I think is the danger is if this becomes kind of a routine part of making local plans process, that councils don't just go, oh, we think we're going to need to build we want to expand the town in this direction, we're going to build here. Is that they say we're going to do that and we're going to take. And you, the landowner, don't have any say on that. Like that's actually quite legally quite dodgy.
Mm-hmm.
We did used to have this system back in the 1950s, and that actually got abolished after just 5 years because it proved really unworkable and really unpopular because no one wants to bring land forward.
It will be interesting to see how it evolves. Rob Colville, thank you very much. He's the Director for the Centre of Policy Studies.
Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Most of us will see some decent sunny spells today, but there are also quite a few showers around, especially in the north and east. At the moment, we do have a northeasterly flow across the country, and it's this that's bringing those showers, and it's also bringing some cold air across us, which is why there's a chillier feel to things for most of us. That being said, some decent sunny spells on offer, especially towards the west and towards the south. Further north and east, a greater chance of catching some of those showers, especially across parts of eastern Scotland. Here, some of them turning wintry, some sleet, some snow over the higher ground. Temperatures in the north similar to perhaps a degree or so higher than yesterday, but factor in the wind, it's going to feel chillier. And in the south, temperatures are dropping compared to yesterday about 4 to 5 degrees in some places, so a chillier feel for sure. As we go through the end of the day, sticking with the showery theme across many parts of Scotland, all the time it's areas exposed to that northeasterly wind where we'll see the most frequent showers, but they are going to push their way further southwards as we go through the end of the day and overnight. So showers feeding into Northern Ireland, across northern England, and some showers pushing further south across parts of England and Wales as well. That being said, as we go overnight, yes, we'll see a few more showers in places, but also some clear spells in between those showers. And with that colder air, the clear spells, we are going to see temperatures dipping. So a touch of frost quite likely in a few places, and where we see any showers clearing to clearer skies, that does bring the risk of some icy patches first thing tomorrow morning. In the south, in particular, it is going to be a chillier start than of late. As we go through tomorrow, then more showers than we'll have seen through today. Some of them could be heavy. There's the risk of a bit of hail, a bit of thunder, maybe some growlpool at times, especially towards the east and northeast of England in particular. Elsewhere, there will be some bright sunny spells in between the showers, especially towards the west, but temperatures, well, they are going to be even lower than today for many, so feeling chillier. Bye-bye.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. One of the biggest events in the horse jump racing calendar kicks off today. It is, of course, the Cheltenham Festival.
Events kick off with the Champion Day, which is the curtain raiser for the 4-day festival, which culminates with the prestigious Cheltenham Gold Cup on Friday.
Well, let's cross live to our reporter, Jack Carson, who's at the races. Jack, have you put a bet on yet?
I don't trust myself, to be perfectly honest, but plenty of people have been. Let me tell you that the bookies have been very busy when you look at how busy and how many people have come to Cheltenham here on the first day. You were mentioning there it's Champion Day, a big race ahead of 4 o'clock. We've not long actually had the 120, and it was fantastic. As soon as the horses got going, the roar from the crowd at Cheltenham, just signalling how excited everyone was to be there. That first roar is always something quite special here at Cheltenham. I remember when I came here last year for the first time and experiencing that it really is quite something. More than 200,000 people expected to be coming over the next few days, all leading up to Friday's Gold Cup Day, of course. But as people came in today, all that excitement building, we spoke to a few of them.
Oh, we'll probably be skint come Friday, but yeah, looking forward to it as always. You know,
Not your first time at Cheltenham?
No, come every year. At least do one day. So yeah.
What is it about it that keeps you coming back?
Just the buzz and the atmosphere. When they start the first race, the hair stands on the back of your neck. It's brilliant.
Well, it's the first day of the festival, start of spring, and I think brighter days ahead.
And how excited are you for Cheltenham this year?
Oh, this is Christmas. This is Christmas. This is our Christmas, isn't it? This is our festival, so we're so looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Is it your first day? Well, first day at Cheltenham. Is it your first time at Cheltenham? Or?
It's not. I've been here 5 or 6 times over from Ireland.
And what is it that keeps you coming back?
The atmosphere, the fun, the crowd, and the lovely English people.
Well, there you go. There's what a few people have told us this morning. There was plenty of excitement, plenty of happy faces. As I'm mentioning, Champion Day today, that 4 o'clock, the big day. Looking at Constitution Hill, who won in 2023, Stateman, who won last year as well. It's going to be quite the battle between those two, but brighter days ahead. That's also one of the favourites. Plenty of people might be having a punt as Cheltenham well underway here in Gloucestershire.
Well, thank you very much, Jack Carson. There you go. You might have a punt out there. You won't win anything, Jack, just so you know, and there's no betting on TV either. And as ever, thank you very much, Jack. Don't bet what you can't afford to lose. That's what I always say. It's just not worth doing. But lots of people have been in touch on gbnews.com/your say. Grumpy Grandad said it's nice having Nana midweek, the voice of common sense. I had to read that one, obviously.
Very good.
Keep them coming, gbnews.com/your say. George Orwell, who is a member, says land grab equals communism, Stalin's Russia. That's what he's saying, that's where we're heading. Is that reasonable?
Well, compulsory purchase order has been in existence a long time. We wouldn't have any motorways, railways or anything if we didn't have that. The question is, how do you do it that's fair and balances all different rights? We'll see. Anyway, don't go anywhere. There's lots more to go on today's show. But first, we're going to have a look at the weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Whilst by the weekend things are looking dry with high pressure building, before then we do have some chilly weather and plenty of showers. All of that is being pushed down on a brisk northerly wind which is adding to the chilly feel to things today, and we are going to continue to see plenty of showers piling their way in. In fact, the showers are going to become a bit more widespread as we go through this evening and overnight, pushing further southwards. That being said, there will be some dry and and clear weather in between those showers. And with that then, we are going to see our temperatures taking a bit of a dip. It's going to be markedly chillier than recent nights across southern areas, low single figures for quite a few places. And where we get the clear skies, a touch of frost is quite likely. Also watch out for some icy stretches first thing tomorrow morning, where we get any showers clearing to clear skies. Perfect ingredients for some icy conditions. So do take care on the roads first thing. But otherwise, across southern areas, a few showers to watch out for during the start of the day. A bit brighter across more central areas and across Northern Ireland too. Plenty of showers though from the start across eastern parts of Scotland and northeast England. As we go through the day, those showers are going to continue. They're perhaps going to be a bit more frequent than we'll have seen through today, and a bit more widespread too. Some of them could be a bit heavy. There could even be the odd rumble of thunder, maybe a bit of hail, a bit of growlpool mixed in with them as well. Some winteriness, some sleet, some snow over modest high ground. We're talking 200 to 300 metres, that kind of thing. Further west, across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, greater chance of staying largely dry with some bright sunny spells, and temperatures for all a little bit lower than today, so feeling pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. More showers to come as we go through the end of the day, especially towards more central and eastern areas. All the time further west, we're staying that little bit drier, and that's the theme into Thursday as well. West is best when it comes to any dry, bright weather. More showers by Friday, but like I said, into the weekend, high pressure building means it's set to turn drier.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter. Just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out. Enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of March. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Nana Aquia. Coming up, deporting foreign criminals, the Conservatives push for all offenders from overseas to be removed from Britain, as it's revealed a quarter of people convicted of sex crimes are foreign.
And a triple murder sentencing. Kyle Clifford, who murdered 2 sisters with a crossbow and their mother with a knife, was also found guilty of raping one of the women, is being sentenced today at Cambridge Crown Court.
Well, after a morning of victim impact statements and legal argument from prosecution and defence, we have now entered the sentencing phase, and it seems likely that Kyle Clifford will receive a whole life tariff.
North Sea inferno. Foul play is not ruled out after an oil tanker and a container ship collide 10 miles off Grimsby.
And Paris migrant mayhem. 450 migrant squatters take over a theatre in France with neighbours facing financial ruin.
Yes, up to 500 migrants have took over this theatre here in Paris in the middle of Fashion Week. We will be with you soon to tell you exactly what is going on.
What a load of rubbish. Kicking up a stink as Birmingham bean workers begin walkouts over pay. Right, so it's a big day as well. I mean, I noticed the story with Reform as well. There were notions that the two who have left the party, so Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, may create a small other party. Has that been debunked?
It's been rumoured in the Telegraph. I think Ben Habib put out a tweet earlier on saying that that wasn't the intention, that he's creating a new outfit to develop policy for the right in politics rather than being party political. But we'll see. I mean, things change so quickly now in politics. A few weeks ago, Nigel Farage was odds on to be the next Prime Minister. Now, you know, the question is, will the party survive at all? Who knows? Politics is very exciting at the moment.
Yes, it's very exciting. I'll be back tomorrow as well to bring you even more of that. But as ever, send us your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, Miriam, thank you and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 2. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. Long, one of those vessels involved in a crash in the North Sea, has no containers on board laden with sodium cyanide, its owner said a short time ago. Those fires aboard the vessels have now greatly diminished off the coast of East Yorkshire today, after that ship collided with a US military jet fuel tanker yesterday. Long's owner, Ernst Russ, said that 4 empty containers on that vessel previously contained the hazardous chemical, and these containers will now continue to be monitored. The Coast Guard called off the search for a missing crew member last night after 36 people were rescued. Number 10 are saying this lunchtime that there is currently no suggestion of foul play following those explosions yesterday morning. Local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. Let's go live now to Cambridge Crown Court, where triple killer Kyle Clifford is being sentenced.
John, into her mother's Facebook page, into buying a crossbow, a knife and an air pistol, and even into the weather on the day of the attack. You bought rope, duct tape, petrol cans, the knife you used in the attack, and a crossbow. You wrote letters to your family dripping with self-pity. On the day of the attack, you first parked well away from the Hunt family home to check if Louise's father was there. Researching his work when you saw his car was indeed outside the house. You approached a second time with a bag of Louise's clothes and a thank you card to Carol and John Hunt, obviously part of a plan to trick Mrs. Hunt into letting you in the house. You first talked to Carol Hunt on the doorstep and persuaded her to admit you. She spoke kindly to you, but you then attacked her, stabbing her to death within moments of entering. You then left the house to collect the crossbow. Louise Hunt had been working in a building in the garden of the house. When she came in, you restrained her with duct tape round her wrists and ankles and gagged her. You kept her there alive for over 2.5 hours. She must have come to realise you'd already killed her mother. During that time, you raped her. Then you murdered her by shooting her with the crossbow as her sister Hannah was about to enter the house. Hannah Hunt was in a rush. She saw you and realised something was very wrong. You then shot her with the crossbow, causing an injury she could never hope to survive, but she remained alive long enough to see the unspeakable violence you had already inflicted on her mother and her sister. Hannah was able to call for help, but when the emergency services arrived, they could not save her. You had fled. You were arrested the next day, whereupon you made a last-minute attempt to kill yourself. I have heard John Hunt, Amy Hunt and Alex Klein speak of their dreadful loss. They were difficult to listen to, given the devastation and heartbreak they recounted. They spoke of Carol, Louise and Hannah as bringing joy, colour and happiness into the lives of everyone they knew. They were funny, hard-working and caring people. Each precious life, so full of potential, of future successes and celebrations, torn away by your appalling violence. The statements of John and Amy Hunt also demonstrated great courage and determination that your terrible crimes will not define them or stop them leading the lives that Carol, Louise and Hannah Hunt would have wished for them. They showed a gentle heroism of which you, Carl Clifford, can only dream. I've already announced the ultimate sentence I will impose. I now need to set out the technical legal reasoning behind the sentences I have decided upon. To deal with lesser matters, I will impose concurrent terms of 1 year's imprisonment for counts 1 and 2, the possession of the crossbow and the possession of the knife. I choose those sentences on the basis of category A2 under the Sentencing Council guidelines, with the aggravation of their planned use and the threat to the crossbow posed to police officers on the 10th of July. The only mitigation is your lack of previous convictions and, to a limited extent, your age. After a trial, the sentence would have been 15 months, but I deduct 20% for your guilty plea well before trial. The surcharge provisions apply and the order can be drawn up accordingly. I make the order for the deprivation of the items on the list uploaded onto the digital case system by the prosecution, including the crossbow, your laptop and phone. The proper sentence for rape is guided by the Sentencing Council. I find the rape of Louise Hunt to fall into the highest range of the top category 1A for the reasons identified by the prosecution. There is no element of double counting, as I have to impose a concurrent sentence given the nature of the sentence for the murders. I therefore take the upper end of the range of 19 years. There is mitigation in your lack of previous convictions, but serious aggravation in the planning of the crime. I will therefore pass a sentence of 20 years imprisonment for that offence. There are no Sentencing Council guidelines currently in force for the offence of false imprisonment, and the circumstances of that offence are so intertwined with the murders that it is hard to separate them. But in any event, it has to be concurrent with the life sentences, so double counting and totality are not issues. Louise Hunt's detention was prolonged, planned, in her own home, and it falls within the Sentencing Council definition of domestic abuse. For this offence, you are also entitled to a deduction for your guilty plea. I therefore pass a sentence after that 20% reduction of 8 years imprisonment. Guidance on the imposition of the mandatory life sentence custodial term is set out in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. A whole life order is normally to be imposed for the murder of 2 or more people where each murder involves a substantial degree of premeditation or planning. Such a disposal is a rare one and reserved for only the most extreme cases. I have considered the guidance of the Court of Appeal in the decisions of Stewart and others, of Kigundu and Osborne. I will not add to the length of these remarks by rehearsing what is set out with great clarity in those judgments, save to highlight 2 points. First, Schedule 21 must be applied in a flexible, not rigid way to achieve a just result. Second, that although paragraph 2.2 of that schedule may have had in mind 2 murders planned then committed on separate occasions, those provisions do not exclude the most severe order being made for multiple killings on the same day. I am satisfied so that I am sure that you both planned and contemplated killing all 3 of your victims. I've already mentioned your planning. You knew the routine and habits of that household. You clearly anticipated that Carol Hunt would be in the house as you went equipped to trick your way inside. You must have known Louise Hunt would be working in the building in the garden, as you knew her routine, and she was the obvious target to be raped and murdered. You knew the routines of the household. You were there for over 4 hours and must have anticipated that Hannah Hunt would return. While you had used Louise Hunt's phone to ensure John Hunt would not be home any time soon, you made no such inquiry about Hannah. You would have known she wore a uniform for work, which she would be bound to come home to change before doing anything else in the evening. I am sure that Hannah too was part of your premeditation and that you intended to murder her if the chance presented itself. Those findings alone could lead to the imposition of a whole life term, but there are 4 further very serious aggravating factors. First, the relevant section of the schedule is triggered by, quote, the murder of 2 or more persons, I stress, or more. It seems to me the fact there were, quote, more, unquote, must be a relevant factor for a judge to have in mind. Otherwise, the courts would be saying the murder of 3 people added nothing to the sentence for the murder of 2, an unthinkable proposition. Second, the rape of Louise Hunt, of which the jury found you guilty last week, which offence was part of the same plan and the same course of conduct as the 3 killings. Third, these murders took place against a woman with whom you had been in an intimate relationship and her family, and so is within the Sentencing Council guidance on domestic abuse, which context makes crimes even more serious. Fourth, the murders of Louise and Hannah Hunt must have involved them becoming aware of the murders you had already committed, thereby inflicting dreadful mental suffering before death, a specified aggravating factor under the schedule. You have been referred to at times as a former soldier. In many cases, that would serve as significant mitigation. Not so in your case, however, as your 2 years in the army included 286 days at home claiming to be ill. You never saw active service, and your utility to the armed forces can be gleaned in a parting comment from your commanding officer that, quote, his character is wholly unsuited to military employment, and he has no care nor concern beyond himself, unquote. There are 3 matters of mitigation. First, your lack of previous convictions. Second, your relative youth, though you were already 26 years old by the time of these offences. Third, you pleaded guilty to the offences of murder, though not at the first opportunity. I have reflected on all 3 aspects. the Sentencing Council guidance makes clear there may be cases where a guilty plea should lead the court to draw back from imposing a whole life order. I have considered and rejected that course, as the factors in favour of such an order are so compelling that they far outweigh all those pieces of mitigation. I am left in no doubt that this is a sentence I must impose. The sentences I pass are therefore: for possession of an offensive weapon, the crossbow, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the possession of an offensive weapon, the knife, 1 year's imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Carol Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order, the early release provisions are not to apply. For the false imprisonment of Louise Hunt, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the rape of Louise Hunt, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. For the murder of Louise Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. For the murder of Hannah Hunt, life imprisonment with a whole life order. The early release provisions are not to apply. I thank.
Well, we seem to have lost the court feed there, but
I think he'd finished sentencing. So let's get to GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. Mark, can you sum that up for us and what the judge was saying? Because we heard that obviously he received a... Mark, can you give us a big summary of what the judge said?
Yes, well, the headline, of course, is that Kyle Clifford will never taste freedom again. He has been handed down a whole life tariff. You heard a number of sentences that were passed for the possession of a crossbow, for the possession of a knife, for false imprisonment, but they, are secondary, really. It is that whole life tariff, which means that he will never be eligible for parole and will never leave prison. He will die behind bars, and that's, of course, the very least that the family were asking for here in terms of the horrific nature of the murders that he committed on the 9th of July last year. And it was really the way in which those murders were pre-planned, calculated, and so very callous that the judge decided that a whole life tariff was appropriate in this case. Other aggravating factors, of course, the number of victims, not just a single victim, but 3 separate victims. Another aggravating factor, the fact, according to the judge, is that each of the victims, apart from the mother, obviously the first victim, but the other 2 victims would have been aware that their loved ones had already been murdered by this man, again just adding to the terrible ordeal and the horror that they experienced in the moments before they were murdered by this man. Remember, Louise Hunt was shot dead by a crossbow that had been purchased a week or so earlier by Kyle Clifford. Her sister Hannah was shot dead by that same crossbow as well when she arrived at the house a little later. The mother had been stabbed to death initially with the use of a butcher's knife. And we also heard in the court that Kyle Clifford was found guilty of raping Louise Hunt as well. He had previously pleaded not guilty to that. There was a trial in which he was found guilty for that. He had pleaded guilty to the 3 murders, and although that would normally be taken as mitigation, the fact that you plead guilty before trial of such a serious crime, in this case, given the aggravating factors, that really cancelled out any mitigation that would have been offered or received by him pleading guilty to those murder charges. You heard the judge also talking about his military service, that normally that could be counted on as a mitigating factor when passing sentence, but not in his case. He had served in the army for 2 years. but almost 300 of those 2 years, 300 days, he had spent at home, supposedly on sick leave. He was an individual who, according to his senior officers, cared for no one else except himself, and he was completely unsuitable material to be a serving member of the British Armed Forces. So that did not enter into any sort of mitigation factor. I should just say that we're waiting for the possibility of statements being read outside the court here in Cambridge. But this was a murder that was committed, we're told, out of vengeance for the fact that Louise Hunt had ended her relationship with Kyle Clifford, an 18-month relationship, because she was unhappy in that relationship. But just a week or so later, he had planned to commit this murder. He had gone to buy rope, he had bought petrol cans, he had bought, of course, the butcher's knife, the crossbow and the crossbow bolts to use as well, all part of what was a premeditated process prior to going out to that family home in Bushey in Hertfordshire on the 9th of July, murdering the mother first, then followed by the horrific rape and murder of Louise Hunt, and then the murder of Hannah Hunt, who arrived home a couple of hours after the other murders had been committed. Louise Hunt knew nothing of what had happened to her mother. She was in the back garden of the family home, working out of a pod that the family had in the back garden, where she ran a dog grooming business. She had a couple of customers that afternoon on the 9th of July last year that she was dealing with, and was mostly in the pod. But at one point she left the pod to go back into the house, and it was there inside the house that clearly she was confronted by Kyle Clifford, and that horrific ordeal began before she was murdered with the use of that crossbow. Kyle Clifford himself ran away after shooting Louise Hunt's sister Hannah in the back with that crossbow. He ran off. He was found eventually a day later by the police in Enfield in North London, in a cemetery there, where he had tried to end his own life. He was unsuccessful in that act, but it caused catastrophic injuries, which has left him wheelchair bound. And today, in fact, as he refused in a cowardly manner to come up to court, to be in that dock to face the victims of his murder victims, the judge had to weigh up whether he forced Kyle Clifford to a remote camera from his location at Belmarsh prison, and the judge decided that he would not do that. One, because of the potential inappropriateness of binding someone and forcing them, dragging them before a camera, remote camera, in that prison, and two, also he did not want to do anything that would disrupt the ability of the family of the victims to put forward those very impactful victim impact statements, very deeply harrowing and emotional statements at times, as we listen to the way in which John Hunt, the well-known BBC racing commentator, spoke of how he had been left, understandably, absolutely devastated by the murder of his wife and his two beloved daughters. And we heard also from Amy Hunt, the older sister of the two women that were murdered by Kyle Clifford as well. She spoke of Kyle Clifford as a monster, but said that these women, these strong, independent women, would not be defined by the actions of Kyle Clifford, but rather of the character of these women and the way that they led their lives as strong, independent women.
Mark, thank you for that. And we understand that not only did Kyle Clifford not attend the sentencing today, but he's also refused to attend the whole trial, which I understand was set in Cambridge Crown Court because it is an accessible court and potentially could have been accessed by wheelchair. So he's not witnessed any of this sentencing or indeed the whole proceedings at all. Is that correct?
That's right. He's completely failed to comply with the court proceedings. You've got to bear with me a second, if you don't mind. I'm just going to ask Uche, our cameraman. It could be a bit messy, but we've got to do this because at some point in the coming minutes, we're going to get some statements outside here. So I'm just going to ask our cameraman to move the camera. He can come off me and just relocate that. Apologies for that, but it's better to be able to get the shots of those coming out to make their statements. It was very interesting in terms of the court proceedings and hearing a victim impact statement from John Hunt, the BBC racing commentator as well. I think he really expressed his anger at the way in which Kyle Clifford did not cooperate at any point with the court proceedings, and the fact that today again he didn't come to court or even view it over a video feed. And John Hunt said that had he done so, he would have been able to look him in the eye as he passed his victim impact statement out. As he read that out in court, he described Kyle Clifford as someone who was callous, cowardly, and someone who tried to pretend that he was a normal, functioning human being, but actually he was, according to John Hunt, a psychopath who carried out these absolutely horrific crimes. And in a very powerful moment, John Hunt said that there would be a red carpet laid out for Kyle Clifford in hell.
You know, when I hear things like this, Mark, is there anything in law? Because you are allowed to carry crossbows. You're not allowed to buy one, but there's no licence or registration that is required to own a crossbow in the UK, and that's under the Crossbows Act of 1987. So they can't be bought and sold in England, Wales or Scotland by those under 18, but you can possess a crossbow. Has the government done anything about this particular law to make sure that people can't access things like this, which is deadly?
Well, I would assume that's for sport. I don't know, but yes, I don't know why that's allowable. I mean, that you can shoot crossbows as a sport. I don't know, Mark. Do you know any more about that? What are the rules around crossbow use?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's illegal, obviously, to have a weapon like that in public. I'm not sure what the licensing requirements are for that. I should say, just at the last minute, we've had a press officer who's come out to tell us that a spokesman for the Crown Prosecution Service and for the police are coming out here very shortly, in about 2 minutes' time, to give their statements. They won't, we're told, take any questions, but they will give their reaction to the sentence that has been handed down today, and of course their reaction and their thoughts on Kyle Clifford, and that the fact that he of course refused to attend court today. I should say, with regard to that, some breaking news from Downing Street from the official spokesman for the Prime Minister is telling us that they are going to change the law by the summer to give power to court officials, to the prison service, to be able to compel or use force, reasonable force, to ensure that people are brought into court, or at least to a remote camera for these sentencing proceedings. I'm just going to put my microphone over here because here are the spokesmen.
I am Detective Chief Inspector Nick Gardner from the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Major Crime Unit. I would firstly like to pay tribute to the Hunt family, John and Amy, and Hannah's partner Alex. They have suffered unimaginable loss as a result of Clifford's actions. They have shown dignity and strength of courage throughout the investigation and trial. And although the sentence will provide little or no consolation, at least we know that Clifford will never be released from prison. Today, Clifford received a whole life sentence, which is fitting for the appalling nature of his crimes. Clifford showed once again that he is a coward. Despite overwhelming forensic evidence, he pleaded not guilty to rape. He refused to attend court for his trial or to hear his punishment. Aged just 26, Clifford has many years ahead of him to consider the consequences of his crime and the senseless devastation he has brought to others. I would like to thank my investigation team for their tireless work and dedication in bringing this case to court. Ultimately, it is their hard work, as well as the evidence secured by officers who attended in the initial response, that has resulted in today's sentence. I would also like to thank the many officers from Hertfordshire Constabulary, the Metropolitan Police Service and the City of London Police who were involved in the initial response to this horrific crime. Clifford was clearly a dangerous man, and these officers acted with immense bravery, knowing that he was likely armed and had killed 3 people just hours earlier. I would like to thank counsel for the prosecution and the Crown Prosecution Service, who we have worked closely together with throughout the duration of this case. 3 innocent women from the same family lost their lives simply because Clifford could not accept rejection or Louise's right to leave their relationship. There was nothing that Louise, Carol or Hannah could have done to predict the violence that ensued or to prevent it from happening. They resisted Clifford's attack with bravery, and Hannah herself raised the alarm, despite having suffered an injury that would later take her life. Today's sentence sends a message to men who perpetrate serious acts of violence against women. You will be held accountable, and you will face the full force of the law. You can run, but you cannot hide from justice. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Kiff from the Crown Prosecution Service. Kyle Clifford is a murderer and rapist who at every turn has attempted to escape the gravity of his actions. From seeking to evade arrest to not attending his trial or the sentencing hearing today, his lack of remorse and accountability for the truly inhumane crimes he has committed has been laid bare. While Clifford pleaded guilty to the murders of Carol, Louise and Hannah Hunt, the Crown Prosecution Service took the decision to proceed with the rape charge. This was to ensure full justice was secured for Louise and to ensure that Clifford could be sentenced for the full extent of his offending. That decision has been vindicated by his conviction for the rape and by the sentence passed today, as Clifford will never be released from prison. On behalf of the Crown Prosecution Service, I want to express my heartfelt sympathies and admiration to the Hunt family. They had the strength and courage to attend court every day and hear firsthand the devastating truth of what happened to Carol, Hannah and Louise. Something which, in stark contrast, Clifford was too cowardly to do. We hope today's sentence, which ensures Clifford can never hurt anyone again, can help the Hunt family with their healing process as they navigate the future and continue to honour the lives of Carol, Louise and Hannah. Thank you.
That's very, very, very tragic news, but I'm glad that he's got a whole of life sentence, really. But, you know, again, I think the government needs to be having a look at the law regarding crossbows. But I think Mark White, is he ready for us? Let's find out what Mark White, what more he can tell us. Mark.
Well, you heard there from the representatives of both the police and the Crown Prosecution Service really compounding the feeling that this was a man who carried out, yes, the most horrific of murders, but continued to show just that cowardice in not facing up to his actions and coming to court to look those relatives of his victims in the eyes, including John Hunt, of course, the husband of Carol Hunt and the father of both Louise and Hannah Hunt, murdered by Kyle Clifford, and Amy Hunt as well, the sister of the two women murdered. And the point as well that they made, the police in particular, I think, about his decision not to plead guilty to that rape charge despite overwhelming forensic evidence that pointed to his guilt. He refused to do that, and of course the family then had to go through the ordeal of listening to that crime being set out in terms through a court case before, of course, a jury eventually found him guilty. So clearly added criticism on top of what was a horrific set of crimes anyway, but just compounded by the fact that he would not plead guilty to the rape of Louise Hunt despite that overwhelming evidence that was there, and both the CPS and the police saying that his cowardice in not going and facing the victims' families there at the sentencing stood in stark contrast to the bravery and the dignity that has been shown by the Hunt family throughout this absolutely horrific ordeal.
Mark White there at Cambridge Crown Court reporting on the sentencing of Kyle Clifford. Thank you, Mark, very much. Well, we'll be back soon, but we're going to go to a break next. We'll be back soon with Good Afternoon Britain.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Northumberland, the A189 is blocked each way between Bebbside and East Sleepburn for an investigation, causing long delays. Trains have been stopped between Kirkham and Weesham and Blackpool South because of a signalling problem. There are delays of up to 40 minutes for some cancelled trains between Rochdale and Clitheroe because of a signalling problem. Some cancelled trains between Cleethorpes and Bartnall Humber thanks to a faulty train earlier. There are severe delays on the Nottingham Express Transit. In Gloucestershire, there are delays on approaches to Cheltenham Racecourse. People heading to the Cheltenham Festival. In London, the A411 Barnet Road in Boreham Wood is closed eastbound towards Arkley for emergency repairs. The M25 in Surrey is partly blocked anti-clockwise, and there's an accident just before junction 10 for the A3 causing queues. And in Hampshire, the A27 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident at Bursledon.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes after 2 o'clock. Now, the Coast Guard has called off the search for a missing crew member after a ship carrying toxic chemicals collided with a US military jet fuel tanker.
Yes, that crash took place on the North Sea off the east coast of Yorkshire yesterday, with emergency services rescuing 36 crew members.
Investigators haven't ruled out foul play following multiple explosions yesterday morning.
Well, let's get the latest with our reporter Anna Riley, who joins us live from the port of Grimsby. Anna, so the search and rescue has been called off. What happens next?
Good afternoon, Miriam and Nana. Well, yes, after the search and rescue is called off, it's the investigation into how exactly this collision happened yesterday just before 10 o'clock between a US oil tanker that was carrying aviation fuel on behalf of the US military and the Solong cargo, a Portuguese vessel that hit it at a speed of 16 knots, which is around 20 miles an hour, causing catastrophic damage to both vessels, forcing crew members to flee, causing a large fireball explosion in the air, and this leaking of aviation fuel into the North Sea. Well, and in terms as well of foul play that has been mentioned by the White House, the most recent update that we've got from Downing Street is that there doesn't appear to be any suggestions of foul play at this time. Now, this comes as one crew member who was aboard the Solong Portuguese vessel has been sadly presumed as dead. The search for that crew member ended last night. The Coast Guard put a stop to it. And we've had an update from Mike Kane, who's the Minister for Aviation, Maritime and Security. He spoke in the House of Commons earlier this afternoon to give that update, along with the update that it's unlikely that the cargo vessel Solong will remain afloat. Here's what he had to say.
Mission, I wish to make a statement regarding the collision between two vessels off the east coast of Yorkshire that occurred yesterday. I want to begin by offering my sincere thanks to all those who are responding on the front line, from His Majesty's Coast Guard to local emergency services. This is a challenging situation, and I know I speak for everyone in this House when I say that the responders' ongoing efforts are both brave and hugely appreciated. I also want to thank the international partners for their many offers of assistance to the UK and the support from the maritime community.
We've also heard that the fire on the US-registered Stena Immaculate appears to have been extinguished, but the Portuguese-registered Solong, fires on that continue to burn. Salvagers are preparing to approach the Stena Immaculate tanker to measure the temperature to see if it is safe to tow or even to look aboard to do some investigations into what has happened. We heard earlier as well in an update that there were no toxic chemicals, no containers on board that cargo ship that were filled with sodium cyanide. Ernst Rust, who owns that cargo ship, said that that has been misreported, that hazardous chemical waste was on board. We've also had an update from the Coast Guard. They've said that the Solong cargo ship has separated from the Stena Immaculate oil tanker and has started to drift southwards. They've said that this has been monitored and that an exclusion zone of a 1 kilometre radius has been put in place around both vessels. Their statement from the Coast Guard continues to say that the air quality at ground level is currently within normal levels for the weather conditions, and the UK Health Security Agency has advised that any public health risk on shore is currently deemed to be very low. But that aviation fuel is still leaking into the North Sea, and of course that brings concerns from environmentalists, environmental charities who have spoken out to talk of their concern for the maritime wildlife, the sea life, any fish that may be affected, as well as the seabirds and seals that are home here in the East Yorkshire coast. So of course that clean-up effort will continue, as well as the investigation into what happened now more than 24 hours ago yesterday here just 10 miles off the coast in the North Sea.
Anna, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That is Anna Riley. Very, very scary, isn't it, really? I mean, they thought there might be some foul play. Obviously, that's been ruled out. But, and also the notion that the tanker had cyanide in it. So I was very concerned.
That's a relief, yes.
But jet fuel is still pretty bad for the animals and the environment there, so it's terrible.
And I think being reported now that the Solong might be about to sink, and they're wondering what to do about that. Yes, very concerning. Well, if you want to continue watching the latest on that story and others, then you can scan the QR code on the screen now or head to GBN2 on YouTube.
But now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece, though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Most of us will see some decent sunny spells today, but there are also quite a few showers around, especially in the north and east. At the moment, we do have a northeasterly flow across the country, and it's this that's bringing those showers, and it's also bringing some cold air across us, which is why there's a chillier feel to things for most of us. That being said, some decent sunny spells on offer, especially towards the west and towards the south. Further north and east, a greater chance of catching some of those showers, especially across parts of eastern Scotland. Here, some of them turning wintry, some sleet, some snow over the higher ground. Temperatures in the north similar to perhaps a degree or so higher than yesterday, but factor in the wind, it's going to feel chillier. And in the south, temperatures are dropping compared to yesterday about 4 to 5 degrees in some places, so a chillier feel for sure. As we go through the end of the day, sticking with the showery theme across many parts of Scotland, all the time it's areas exposed to that northeasterly wind where we'll see the most frequent showers, but they are going to push their way further southwards as we go through the end of the day and overnight. So showers feeding into Northern Ireland, across northern England, and some showers pushing further south across parts of England and Wales as well. That being said, as we go overnight, yes, we'll see a few more showers in places, but also some clear spells in between those showers. And with that colder air, the clear spells, we are going to see temperatures dipping. So a touch of frost quite likely in a few places, and where we see any showers clearing to clearer skies, that does bring the risk of some icy patches first thing tomorrow morning. In the south, in particular, it is going to be a chillier start than of late. As we go through tomorrow, then more showers than we'll have seen through today. Some of them could be heavy. There's the risk of a bit of hail, a bit of thunder, maybe some growlpool at times, especially towards the east and northeast of England in particular. Elsewhere, there will be some bright sunny spells in between the showers, especially towards the west, but temperatures, well, they are going to be even lower than today for many, so feeling chillier. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Bin workers in Birmingham are set to go on indefinite strike over pay and working conditions.
The walkouts, which began in January, are due to go ahead despite reports of overflowing bins and rat infestations.
Members of the trade union Unite voted for today's all-out strike action last month.
So we're joined by GB News reporter Steve Bennett. Steve, what more can you tell us about all of this?
Yeah, that's right. 350 bin workers are now officially on all-out strike, and it comes as Birmingham City Council are making the waste and recycling collection officer role redundant. Now, Unite say that is a safety critical role as part of a 4-person bin crew. They look after the safety of not just the public, but the crew themselves, and they deal with any live issues out on the road. Birmingham City Council deny that to be an issue and say they're simply bringing waste collection in line with other local authorities. Earlier on, I spoke to some of the bin people on the picket line and a Unite officer, and here's what they had to say.
Unfortunately, since November, we've had to take industrial action ballot just to get conversations going with the council, and that's why we've had to escalate the action to get some movement from them.
The council need to value us. We do the whole of Birmingham. Everybody produces rubbish. Come on, let's be fair. Let's pay the men fairly. They work in all weathers, every day of the year. We worked all through COVID. We were the only department in the council to work through COVID. We got no extra money for that, no extra pay. We put our families, our lives at risk, and now the council see fit to try and cut our money.
I mean, it's really, really uncomfortable. One thing also that the public needs to realise is that majority of the bin men here, we're Birmingham residents too. I mean, my recycling hasn't been collected since the start of the strikes, and also with the household rubbish, we've been getting very unregular collections, just like I imagine majority of the Birmingham public are as well.
So the binmen there from the picket line this morning, and Unite say that up to 150 workers are set to miss out on £8,000 a year if they're made to retrain into other roles as a result of this redundancy. And Birmingham City Council have responded by offering voluntary redundancy to those positions affected, with fees up to £7,000 thought to have been offered, which some workers have accepted. Now, there's a second issue here as well to do with staffing. Birmingham City Council have been using agency workers to plug the gaps left by the striking binmen, and Unite aren't happy with that. They say it's unlawful and it undermines their strike action. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham said the use of employment agencies to try and break the strike is disgraceful. But let me be clear, our members will not back down from these brutal attacks. So as you can see, the bins are piling up behind me all around Birmingham. It really is a testing time for these locals.
Right, Steve Bennett, thank you very much.
Now, we want to make your spring spectacular in our latest Great British giveaway, with your chance to win £17,777 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also win not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and a designer bag.
So if you want to look at how you can make yourself feel a part of this spring, then here are all the details that you need.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch on your say. Grumpy Grandad says, I can see no reason for anyone having a crossbow. A few years ago, I thought one might be fun for a bit of target practice, and I bought a cheap one on the internet. I used it just once. I had a target pinned to an old wooden trestle table. It went straight through the table and fence behind it. I pulled it apart and dumped it straight in the bin. To say it was lethal would be an understatement. It was only cheap, 20 quid. They should be banned.
Well, I think you can't buy one if you're under 18. There's all sorts of laws, but I think the last government did do a consultation on tightening the law, but I don't think that the Labour government have responded. So anyway, we'll keep you up to date on that.
Let's see if we can push them to do something. But listen, thank you so much for watching. Good afternoon, Britain. I'll be back tomorrow with Miriam.
Indeed.
Don't go anywhere.
See you tomorrow.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Whilst by the weekend things are looking dry with high pressure building, before then we do have some chilly weather and plenty of showers. All of that is being pushed down on a brisk northerly wind which is adding to the chilly feel to things today, and we are going to continue to see plenty of showers piling their way in. In fact, the showers are going to become a bit more widespread as we go through this evening and overnight, pushing further southwards. That being said, there will be some dry and clear weather in between those showers, and with that then we are going to see our temperatures taking a bit of a dip. It's going to be markedly chillier than recent nights across southern areas, low single figures for quite a few places, and where we get the clear skies, a touch of frost is quite likely. Also watch out for some icy stretches first thing tomorrow morning, where we get any showers clearing to clear skies, perfect ingredients for some icy conditions, so do take care on the roads first thing. But otherwise, across southern areas, a few showers to watch out for during the start of the day, a bit brighter across more central areas and across Northern Ireland.